Good morning, delegates, alternates, guests, colleagues, and friends. My name is Gus Bickford, Chair of the Massachusetts Democratic Party, and it's 10:01, and I now call to order the 2021 Massachusetts Democratic Party Platform Convention. We're coming to you today from our host city of Lowell, Massachusetts. I, like many of you, wish that we could have been together in person. But hosting this convention virtually is the right thing to do to protect our health and the public health of Merrimack Valley. Thank you to our host committee. You've helped put together a great show despite our circumstances. And I'll be frank, it's been a tough 19 months. The crises we face today, a global pandemic, a climate emergency, rising economic inequality, the clear need for racial justice, an assault on our abortion rights, they're not new. But for the first time, we stand at their cross-section, facing an extraordinary test as a country and Commonwealth. As a party, we've had many conversations over the past 19 months about how we begin to tackle these historic crises. Many of these conversations were long overdue, but were necessary to build a better party. They were critical to creating the strong, unified coalition that's giving us the opportunity to build our country back better right now. What we've learned from many of these conversations was that people want change. They expect these crises to be met with big ideas and ambitious plans. And today, I'm proud to say that the 2021 party platform is a document that we all drafted together to meet the current moment. With the input of Massachusetts Democrats across Massachusetts, co-chairs Steve Tompkins, Jay Gonzalez, and Shannon Liss-Riordan, and the entire platform committee have shown voters the bright vision we have for our future, a future where we are all housed, healthy, happy, safe, and free. The leadership we have in the White House, President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris, is driving us towards that future. But for Massachusetts to become a shining example of what's possible when we take bold action, we need a governor who doesn't drag his feet while the rest of us march forward. We need a governor who cares about accessible, reliable transportation in every single corner of our Commonwealth, who cares about the potholes that you hit, the hours of traffic that you sit in every day, who doesn't try to jack up fares, cut service, and privatize public transportation into obscurity. We need a governor who protects reproductive rights for everyone, who doesn't stymie access to birth control and other reproductive care services, who doesn't cross out critical provisions to expand abortion rights, as members of his own party wage war on Roe versus Wade across the country. We need a governor who takes accountability, who doesn't pass the blame when things get tough, who doesn't tell lies to families of soldiers in Holyoke to cover up his role in the outbreak that led to the deaths of dozens of veterans. We deserve better than Charlie Baker. We deserve a governor who's willing to speak up, who offers us more than lukewarm platitudes, someone who has a backbone. We need a Democrat in the corner office. And later in the program, you'll hear from 3 announced candidates who we'll all be proud of. Earlier on, I mentioned having big ideas and ambitious plans. I want to talk a little bit about one of ours. Earlier this year, we launched our program called Blueprint to 22, our plan to expand the Democratic coalition, trade grassroots campaigners, and make lasting contributions to our communities. Through our program, local Blueprint teams have learned skills like voter contact strategy and volunteer management, but they've used these skills to recruit volunteers for back-to-school drives and community cleanups. They're not just being good voters or good campaigners, they're being good neighbors, because that's what Democrats do. It's how we live our values. You'll hear more about Blueprint to 22 later in the program, but in the meantime, please go to massdems.org/blueprint to learn about the program and sign up. It all comes back to compassion, goodwill, acceptance. Those are the values at the center of every plank of our platform, and I'm excited to be celebrating that platform with you today. So let's get to it. Now I'd like to introduce our Mass Democratic Vice Chairs, Debbie Kozakowski and Leon Brathwaite. We will start with our first Vice Chair and DNC member, Deb Kozakowski.
Good morning, Democrats. That's always my favorite way to open any remarks I make in front of a podium when we're together. My first introduction is someone that I met over 10 years ago and who struck me at the time as someone who had candor and commitment to the Democratic Party. Little did I know that a decade later I would be introducing you to listen to remarks by Democratic National Committee Chair Jamie Harrison. When Jamie Harrison started his leadership PAC during his now infamous and quite well done U.S. Senate campaign in his native South Carolina, the name of it was Dirt Road PAC, and that's because that's where Jamie came from. Born to poverty, raised by love, he became a successful attorney, returning back to South Carolina and public service, to which he is so committed, and we are so lucky to have him as our Democratic National Chair. Without going any further than telling you, we are incredibly thrilled to hear from Jamie today.
Hello, folks. Thank you all so much for having me at this year's MassDems convention. My friends, I say this all the time. The D in Democrats, it stands for deliver. In the past 9 months, that's exactly what we've done. President Biden has expanded the child tax credit to give millions of working families a monthly tax cut. In the Commonwealth, we're projected to lift 55,000 kids out of poverty. We've made healthcare more affordable in Massachusetts and across the country. And with the president's Build Back Better agenda, we're poised to make the biggest investment in working families and our infrastructure since the New Deal. When Democrats are in office, this country thrives under real leadership. But folks, we can't lead if we don't win. That's why the DNC is laser focused on the midterms. We've invested $20 million in organizing, $23 million in our state parties, and $25 million in voter protection to make sure we win big in 2022. And my friends, one of the most important elections of the 2022 cycle is right here in Massachusetts. We've got to make sure we take back the governor's office. The MassDems have already hit their ground running, and I can't think of a better group of leaders than Chair Gus Bickford, my dear friend Vice Chair Deb Kozakowski, and Vice Chair Leon Braithwaite. At the DNC, I'm lucky to have an incredible team of leaders, including Massachusetts' own Roger Lau and Maureen Gard, engaged in the work. But we need each and every one of you in this fight. Get involved in Blueprint to 2022. Help organize your neighbors, serve your communities, and get the skills to help elect Democrats up and down the ballot. Prove that Democrats don't just show up around Election Day. Show the people of the Commonwealth that MassDems show up every day and that you're committed to addressing their everyday needs. Folks, I'm a bit of a comic book nerd. Growing up, they're how I learned to read. And if I know one thing, it's that we're going to need the Avengers assembled to win in 2022. And no, I don't mean Captain America, Thor, and the Vision, and all of them. I mean all of you. We've got a winning game plan, but it's going to take each of us giving just a little bit more than we think we can, building a little more on top of the work we did in 2020. Together, we can put a Democrat back in the corner office and make sure Democrats can continue to deliver for the people of Massachusetts. Thank you all so much for all that you do.
Second gentleman, Doug Emhoff, describes himself as a devoted father, experienced lawyer, and a proud husband to Vice President Kamala Harris. Attorney Emhoff has taken to public service like a fish to water. Priorities matter. His commitment to the Biden administration's planned investments in working families was on display just a few days ago here in Massachusetts on a visit to a Massachusetts preschool. And today, his support for efforts like our own MassDems Blueprint 2022 is fast becoming legend. I am honored to introduce the following heartfelt message from second gentleman Doug Emhoff.
Hello, Democrats. Welcome to the Massachusetts Democratic Party 2021 Platform Convention. Thank you, Chair Bickford, Vice Chairs Kozakowski and Brathwaite for inviting me to join you today. And thank you all for coming together to help define the ways you can support our shared values. And what are those values? We believe in equity. We believe in inclusion. We believe in justice, in the rule of law, and in fairness. Earlier this week, I was in the Commonwealth to visit a preschool in Milford. I spent time with teachers, administrators, and I read one of my favorite children's books, The Very Hungry Caterpillar, to the students. I used to read that one to my kids. And while there, I was reminded of how important it is to put our values into action. I heard from these teachers about the challenges they have faced during the pandemic. They told me how grateful they are for the support they have received from the administration through the American Rescue Plan, which allowed them to keep their school from closing. The Biden administration values the experiences of these teachers, preschoolers, and their parents. And the challenges they face are issues that impact all of us. That's why the president and my wife, the vice president, are working so hard to build a future that is worthy of our country's children. By promoting childcare, nutrition, education, we are helping our nation, our workforce, and our economy. The work you do over this next year will help us continue to move forward together. Your party is organizing all across the Commonwealth to elect Democrats up and down the ballot. You're using the successes of the Biden-Harris administration and the Build Back Better agenda to talk to voters so they know that we're working for them. We're putting shots in arms. We're supporting small businesses. We're keeping families in their homes, and we're helping lift millions of families out of poverty. And soon, we're going to deliver hundreds of millions of dollars of infrastructure funding. This will create jobs, improve roads and bridges, and provide much-needed rural broadband. We're able to do all of this because of the hard work each and every one of you put into electing Democrats. That is how we will continue to deliver results for the American people. So thank you all for everything that you do to move our great nation forward. I hope you have an amazing convention. Thank you.
Good morning, delegates. My name is Leon Brathwaite, and it's my pleasure to introduce some young people from the Boys and Girls Club of Greater Lawrence to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, boys and girls. I would now like to introduce a Lowell native, Tanisha Scarlett, to sing the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets irregular, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land and the home of the brave.
Thank you, Tanisha. Now I'd like to introduce the Lowell delegation, Senator Ed Kennedy, Representative Ratty Maughan, Representative Tom Goulden, and later you'll hear from Representative Vanna Howard. Please welcome Lowell's favorite senator, Senator Ed Kennedy.
Thank you, Leon, and greetings, fellow Democrats. As a state senator who represents this year's convention host city, and as a member of the Democratic State Committee since 1980, I would like to welcome you to the 2021 Massachusetts Democratic State Convention. The citizens of Lowell are excited to be the virtual host for all of the delegates and officials from around the Commonwealth at this year's convention. Although we are meeting remotely this year, I hope you will soon come to Lowell in person and experience some of the many historical and cultural attractions, culinary delights, and natural beauty offered by the city of Lowell. Downtown Lowell is filled with a variety of great ethnic restaurants and shops, and I am sure you will find no shortage of things to entertain you. There are many places to visit, such as the Lowell National Historical Park, the Whistler House Museum of Art, Weston Avenue Studios, which is the home to more than 370 working artists and several other museums and art galleries. Live theater, concerts, and shows are offered at the Merrimack Repertory Theater and the Lowell Memorial Auditorium. During the cold weather months, come back to the Songus Arena and watch the UMass Lowell Riverhawks ice hockey team compete in the NCAA Division I level in the Hockey East Division. Spend a weekend in Lowell in February and enjoy the family-friendly annual Winter Festival. And I invite you to come back next summer and take in an outdoor concert at Boarding House Park. As we hopefully return to normalcy after this pandemic, Lowell will once again host 4 major festivals, including the African Festival, the Indian Festival, the Southeast Asian Water Festival, and the very popular Lowell Folk Festival. One of my favorite events, the Kinetic Sculpture Race, takes place in September, and the Lowell Celebrates Kerouac Festival happens every October. As the city's motto says, there is a lot to like about Lowell, and there is plenty to do here year-round. So on behalf of the residents, the businesses, the State House delegation, and municipal officials of our great city, I am sorry that you are unable to join us in person, but Lowell looks forward to hosting you in person real soon. Enjoy the convention.
Hello, everyone. This is State Representative Ratty Maughan. I would like to welcome all of you to this year's convention, take place in my hometown, Lowell, Massachusetts. I know it is not the same because we're not there in person. I hope that everyone enjoyed this time that we have through the media. I hope that all of you are staying safe as well. Have fun. I hope to see you soon in person. Take care.
Massachusetts Democratic Party 2021 convention right here in the city of Lowell. My name is Tom Goulden, state representative from the city of Lowell, and although we're not here together in person, we will be in the future. We want to make sure that you have the opportunity to see all the wonderful attractions that Lowell has to offer. The Lowell National Historic Park, all the unbelievable restaurants, because what we celebrate here in Lowell, we celebrate our diversity and we celebrate the people of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So once again, thank you for being here. We appreciate you, and always remember, there's a lot to like about Lowell. We hope to see you soon.
Hello, I'm Kathy Gasparin. I'm your state treasurer for the Massachusetts Democratic Party, and welcome, Democrats. It's a pleasure for me to be here today to introduce our next speaker. Lori Trahan is the daughter of Lowell. She grew up here with her 3 sisters. Her dad was an iron worker, and her mom helped her family also as a working parent with many jobs raising her and her sisters. Lori learned the values here in Lowell that she carries with her today, the principles of sacrifice, hard work, and grit. She was the first in her family to graduate from college. She attended Georgetown on a D1 volleyball scholarship, and she caught the bug of public service working for Marty Meehan and eventually rising to be his chief of staff. Lori went on for a career in the private sector and led a female tech company and ran for Congress and won in a historic class of 2018. She has quickly risen to power and in the halls of Congress, and she now serves on the powerful House Committee on Energy and Commerce. She advocates for the Bay State on pressing issues facing our Commonwealth and the nation, including making healthcare more affordable, addressing climate change, protecting kids online, and fighting disinformation in our media. I'm so very proud to be introducing my representative from the Massachusetts 3rd, Representative Lori Trahan.
Good morning, and thank you all for being a part of the 2021 Massachusetts Democrats Platform Convention. It is my honor to welcome everyone tuning in virtually today to my hometown of Lowell. The Mill City is a proud community, home to working families like the one I grew up in, who go to work each day striving to create a better life for their children and grandchildren. It's a city known for welcoming immigrants like my Portuguese and Brazilian grandparents and creating the conditions for them to succeed. And it's a place that embodies our party's shared priorities, ensuring that everyone has access to the tools and resources necessary to flourish, no matter who they are, where they're from, or who they love. It's fitting that we reconvene here in Lowell once again, albeit virtually, to celebrate our shared values and recommit ourselves to turning them into policy. Although I wish we could be together in person for this year's convention, today is a celebration of all the work we've done together over the past 2 years. It's thanks to your tireless efforts that we've been tremendously successful up and down the ballot and in advancing transformational legislation at all levels of government. In the district I have the privilege to represent, we were able to flip a state Senate seat by electing John Cronin to represent Fitchburg and surrounding communities. But of course, Massachusetts Democrats didn't stop there. Your participation in campaigns across the nation was key in retaining our majority in the House and flipping 2 Senate seats in Georgia to finally kick Mitch McConnell out of power. And your determination to remove Donald Trump from the White House fueled President Biden's victory last November, enabling us to undo the damage of the last administration and begin the hard work of building our nation back better than ever before. That started with confirming the most diverse cabinet in our nation's history. So President Biden, and of course the first woman and woman of color ever elected Vice President, Kamala Harris, could hit the ground running. And it continued with passage of the historic American Rescue Plan, legislation that has proven key in delivering relief to working families trying to make ends meet, getting shots into arms, and giving our heroic hospital workers and first responders the resources necessary to continue saving lives. However, our work is far from over. As we speak, Congress is working to advance once-in-a-generation investments in working families to create a strong, more inclusive economy, one that benefits them and not just the wealthy and well-off. That means shortening our road to recovery from the pandemic by getting folks back to work in good-paying jobs while lowering the cost of supporting their families, childcare, prescription drugs, universal pre-K, paid family and medical leave, and so much more. But that's not all. This package will finally mandate a whole-of-government approach to treating climate change like the global crisis we know it is, by transitioning to a clean energy economy and holding polluters accountable. These are just a few of the long overdue changes that we're going to accomplish. But let's be clear, none of this would be possible without all you've done and everything you continue to do. That's why I'm excited about the platform we've built this year, and I'm confident that it will translate to another cycle of historic wins across the Commonwealth and around the nation. But we can't afford to become complacent, not for a minute. Far-right Republicans have taken over their state and national parties, and they're hell-bent on doing everything possible to retake power, to reinstate Donald Trump, and to prevent Democrats from ever winning another election. They know that their radical policies and leaders are unpopular, So they're rewriting the rules of our democracy to tilt the scales in their favor. We know what's at stake in elections this fall and next year, and we can't let them win. With your commitment to fulfilling the ambitious goals laid out in our platform, we'll defeat politicians who want nothing more than to reverse the progress we've made. And we'll continue delivering on our promises to improve the lives of everyone who calls the Commonwealth of Massachusetts home. Thank you for being part of this movement. Thank you for all you do day in and day out to move our country forward. And thank you for being the leaders we need in this fight. It's an honor to work alongside you each day, and I look forward to a productive convention and a successful year ahead. Stay safe and stay healthy.
Good morning, and welcome to the 2021 Massachusetts Democratic State Convention. I'm so honored to be here and to speak to you all. We're Democrats, and we share the fundamental beliefs in the constitutional principles that have brought us to this point in our history. Liberty, equality, justice, diversity, with each of us pursuing our own happiness in this society. As always, we have to continue to work together and find the common ground to address those areas of our lives where these ideals are unfulfilled. Look around. Too many of us still lack quality education, health care, housing, food security, racial and economic justice, and equity in our court systems. And that will be their futures as well, unless we produce these outcomes. I was on that end of the spectrum for most of my life. I needed others to help me attain some of these things for myself. I was just so lucky to have that help, and would otherwise not probably be here before you today without it. Since my election last year, I see more and more of my neighbors and people in my community who have seen little or none of these in action in their lives. It shouldn't be luck. It should be the status quo. And with us all pulling together, that equitable society for everyone will arrive. Let's redouble our efforts in the coming year towards that kind of society we all want for everyone. I stand ready to work with you all, and I know your hand is outstretched to me as well to make this happen, and we will. Be well, everyone.
Hello, Massachusetts Democrats. You know, I wish we could be together in person, but we know that's just not possible right now. Even so, I am honored to be with you virtually today because the last year has been a trying time for communities all across our Commonwealth and our nation. The reason that we have made it to this point is because we have stood together, a truth that would not have been possible without the help of bold, courageous leaders in our party. Resistors and persisters, like our chairman, Gus Bickford, our dynamic vice chairs, Deb Kozakowski and Leon Braithwaite, and Ray Jordan, our chair emeritus. Thank you all. I also want to say a very special thank you to the Lowell Host Committee for working so hard to plan another successful convention. I am so sorry that we can't be there in person this year, but I know that we are all eager to get back to the Tsongas Center as soon as we possibly can. I've had the chance to connect person to person with many of you again at meet and greets all across the state. And, you know, things are different right now. We don't get to shake hands, we don't get to hug or take selfies the way that we used to. But even so, we're together, we connect heart to heart. And in these town halls, I've heard loud and clear the fears that you have about the fights ahead in Washington. Racial justice, economic justice, climate justice, reproductive justice, and the urgent need to invest in children and working families. So many fights, so many fears. But here is why I am hopeful. Despite the challenges that we face right here in Washington, fear never dominates us in Massachusetts. We know you don't get what you don't fight for. So here's how I see the path forward. For the first time in more than a decade, Democrats have control of the House, the Senate, and the White House. Stop for a moment and just say, woohoo. A Democratic majority in a time of crisis means the door to change has been opened, at least a crack. In this moment, what was once thought of as impossible now becomes possible. And that means this is the moment to fight with everything we've got. We can reimagine our tax code with billionaires and giant corporations actually paying a fair share. We can pass universal child care. We can expand Medicare to cover vision, dental, and hearing. And we can make a real commitment to fight back against climate change. So let's get the infrastructure bill all the way across the finish line, building more muscle, working with each other along the way. Let's agree then on the voting rights bill, which we're very close to in the Senate. And then let's set our sights on the filibuster, the greatest threat to making change. I know that is a lot to do at the same time, but we just can't afford to drop the ball. Our system has long been rigged to work for the wealthy and the well-connected against everyone else. But right now, like I said, that door is open. Maybe just a crack, but it is open for us to make the system a little more fair. And I'm hitting that door as hard as I can, fighting to make this a nation that works not just for a tiny number at the top, but a nation that works for everyone. And that brings me to one more fight that we should all see as our own. In Massachusetts, tech giants like Uber and Lyft and Instacart have been illegally denying their drivers and delivery workers fair pay, benefits, and basic protections. There's no minimum wage, no reimbursement for gas and other expenses, no sick time, no unemployment, no Social Security benefits. If workers are injured, if they're discriminated against, if they're harassed, they're just on their own. Here in Massachusetts, we are not willing to look the other way. We think everyone should follow the law. So Attorney General Maura Healey is suing two of the biggest companies, Uber and Lyft. She says either follow the law or pay a big fine, just like any other lawbreaker would have to do. But instead of following the law, these giant companies launched a $100 million lobbying campaign to change the law, to make their exploitation permanent. We've seen this story already once in California. Out in California, when Proposition 22 passed, unionized grocery store workers across the state were laid off and replaced with app-based drivers. Hotel workers lost their jobs. Retail workers lost their jobs. It was a disaster for workers who are trying to pay the rent and keep food on the table. Now these companies want to come across the country to Massachusetts, and they want to run the same play. Big tech wants to buy a law here in Massachusetts, and they want that law to apply across the board to drivers, hotel workers, retail workers. Let's face it, they have no stopping point. Well, not on my watch. I am proud to stand with workers and to stand with unions, to stand with allies, to stand with civil rights groups and say no to these big tech companies and their millions of dollars that they're willing to spend to try to buy a different law here in Massachusetts. Our laws are not for sale, not to big tech, not to anyone. We will not abandon our workers, not to big tech, not to anyone. Big tech cannot boost their own profits by squeezing workers to the breaking point, not here in Massachusetts. So look, I get it. They're going to spend a lot of money. This is an uphill battle, but my heart is full of optimism because on this fight and on so many others, this defines who we are. And there are a whole lot more of us in this fight than there are of them. And here's what I know for sure. When we stand together, when we fight together, when we persist together, we win. So let's get this done, Democrats.
It is now my pleasure to introduce U.S. Senator Ed Markey.
Hello, Massachusetts Democrats. It's an honor.
Born and raised in Malden, Massachusetts, Senator Ed Markey learned his progressive values at the kitchen table. And he hasn't stopped fighting for those values since. Please welcome our next speaker, Senator Markey.
Hello, Massachusetts Democrats. It's an honor to join you virtually this year at the Platform Convention. And I have full confidence that in 2022, we will be together again in person, taking selfies, giving long overdue hugs and high fives to each other. Thank you to our Commander-in-Chief, Gus Bickford, who is ensuring that Massachusetts is the deep blue front line of democratic politics in our country. His leadership means our families, our workers, and our bedrock democratic values remain front and center in our organizing and our policies. We're grateful for all of your work, Gus, and the whole team at the Democratic State Party. And I want to begin with the most sincere thanks I can give to all of you for the support you provided me in my campaign in 2020. To the organizers, to the delegates, to the grassroots that were with me and helped fuel me to re-election to the United States Senate, know that you were the foundation of my campaign. I could not have done it without you. Massachusetts has the best grassroots organizers in the nation. I knew that before, and you proved that to everyone across the nation last year. And I know that we are unique as a state because we do this grassroots organizing, convening every single year. This annual state convention is unique in all of America. We have a full convention every single year. And that's because we know that it's all about the grassroots. We know that we have to go to the grassroots, to the delegates, to the organizers on the ground to really make change. And this yearly convention is the commitment we have in Massachusetts and as Democrats to the power of the grassroots. When we get together each year, yes, we do so to create the platform, to identify the priorities, to debate the issues, but we also do it to reassert that the people drive the politics and the policies and that the grassroots are the people. And I'm so grateful for everything you do, the door knocking, the sign holding, the phone banking, the texting, the person-to-person discussions. I will say it again, I couldn't have done it without you last year, and this democratic country that we now live in couldn't do it without Massachusetts. I know The crises facing our country right now are numerous. This is one of the most consequential moments in our nation's history as we finally take bold action on healthcare justice, environmental justice, economic justice, racial justice, and environmental justice. And I want to spend my time with you today focusing on the one issue that I believe connects them all, the economic, health, global security, moral issue of our time, the climate crisis. The one issue defines our future. Every other problem is linked to it. No solution to any challenge will be successful unless we address it. There will be no peace, no justice, no prosperity unless we stop the march to climate destruction. This is a matter of life and death. The very future of our civilization depends upon it. There is no time for the status quo. The time to act boldly and urgently is now. We need a Green New Deal for our country. The past 2 years have proven that the Green New Deal isn't just a resolution, it's a revolution. There is now a diverse, organized army of activists, leaders, and communities demanding the most ambitious action possible on climate. It's an intergenerational compact to save the planet, spearheaded by young people who will face the most dire impacts of the climate crisis if we do nothing to stop it. For them and for all of us, the Green New Deal is a promise of a livable future. We saw in 2020, for the first time, that bold climate action not only was a voting issue, it was a winning issue. Since Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and I introduced it in February of 2019, the Green New Deal has raised the world's awareness to the scope and the scale of the challenges we face and the solutions we need to enact. Wildfires in the West, hurricanes and flooding in the Gulf, and here in the East, 9 inches of rain in New Bedford, smoke and air quality devastation throughout the country, billions of dollars in costs with no end in sight. The question isn't if we will take climate action, it needs to be when we will take climate action. And that time is now. Congress is debating 2 major pieces of legislation, a bipartisan infrastructure bill and a budget reconciliation package. We have a choice to make, big and bold, or the status quo. The answer is clear. We cannot limit our imagination to simply building more highways, especially when we have so many more climate action and clean energy opportunities to unlock. Wind, solar, electric vehicles, batteries, storage, energy efficiency, strengthening our grid, sustainable farming. This is our future. Democrats voted overwhelmingly for climate action in 2020. These voters will be in jeopardy in 2022 and 2024 if we don't put climate action at the center of all of our work. Without it, it's not just a broken promise to the voters who elected Democrats last year. It is a broken promise to every young person who will inherit an unlivable planet. I will not break that promise to young people. This is the historic moment we must seize to get our emissions down, create good union jobs, supercharge our clean energy economy. We need action that matches the scale of the generational climate challenge. It's time to stop talking only about what is politically possible and start talking about what is scientifically necessary. We must do what it takes to create the jobs, to render the justice, to ensure the livable future that the Green New Deal calls for. We have the technology to do it. We have the economic imperative. We have the moral obligation. We just need the political will. And when we talk about infrastructure, we cannot forget about the people who use it. I want to make it very clear. Childcare is infrastructure. Education is infrastructure. Paid leave is infrastructure. Democrats understand that investing in a healthy economy means investing in our people. And as we fight for the health of our people and our planet, we must fight like hell for our democracy as well. We must abolish the filibuster, a Jim Crow relic that is an obstacle to climate action, to raising the minimum wage and to criminal justice reform, to abortion access, to comprehensive immigration reform, and to ensuring universal health care is a right for all people. The choice is simple: the filibuster or democracy. We must choose democracy. The filibuster must go. In the past several months, the Republicans used the filibuster to stop the bipartisan January 6th commission, to stop equal pay for equal work, and to block voting rights. If we don't abolish the filibuster, Republicans will move to ensure that the rights of women, the LGBTQ community, immigrants, black and brown communities, unions, and vulnerable Americans will become political pawns. They think these groups are expendable. Some in the GOP think that they are dismissible, but we know these communities are the future of our democracy and make up the winning coalition that will help us keep the House, protect the Senate, and pass the Biden agenda. I thank you, Massachusetts Democrats, for being the agents of change, the leaders in our fight for a more progressive, more hopeful future. Now is the time. You are the people, and I am your partner in the fights ahead. And I thank you for having me address you today, and know that I am with you every single day in this fight for the future of our people and our planet. Thank you for everything you do to help build the just and livable future that all children deserve. Now, let's get to work. Led by Massachusetts, thank you for everything you do.
Good morning, Massachusetts Democrats. My name is Suzanne Bump. I'm your state auditor, and it's my privilege today to be introducing my colleagues in constitutional office. First up is Bill Galvin. Following a distinguished career in the Massachusetts State Legislature, Bill Galvin rose to the position of Secretary of State. In addition to his other responsibilities, including overseeing corporations, securities, lobbying efforts, he has also been the Chief Elections Officer for the Commonwealth, ensuring free and fair elections and ballot access. It's my pleasure to introduce Bill Galvin, the protector of our franchise. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne. Good morning, Massachusetts Democrats. I think it's extremely important that we're holding this convention at this time, despite the difficulties we have all had in getting together, because we are not simply the Democratic Party. We are the party of democracy. As has already been noted by our U.S. senators, democracy is under attack. It is under attack throughout our country. With ruthless efficiency, Republicans across the United States have stripped the rights of citizens to vote, in particular targeting persons of color and persons who support principles such as we believe in. We cannot simply stand by and allow this to happen. It not only affects the political outcome, it affects the future of our democracy and the future of our country. Right now, as you know, the Congress is considering actions to protect the rights of voters across our country. This is urgently needed. We have shown the way here in Massachusetts that voter rights can be protected and expanded without any impact on the integrity of the electoral process. We were able to implement last year voting by mail without excuse, early voting extensively, and many other practices that were certainly helpful not only to allowing people to vote, but to giving us record turnouts in the 3 elections that we held last year, the presidential primary, the state primary, and the general election. We want to continue that progress. I have been fighting within our legislature to get these made permanent. I expect that will happen. I am concerned that it has not happened as quickly as I would have hoped. But I know not only is it essential that we have those rights here, that we also protect them across our country. The only way we can do that is to lead, and we need to lead by moving on this election matters right now. The fact of the matter is that if we don't protect the right to vote throughout the country, all the issues that we as Democrats have fought for and care about, whether it's civil rights, social justice, economic advancement, climate change, are all at risk. The Republican Party has determined that the only way they can survive and prosper and pursue their agenda is to limit the rights of people to vote. So once again, we must become the party of democracy across the country. No other issue is more important. If the red alert has been sounding on climate change, the red alert is also sounding on democracy right now from one end of our country to another. I'm pleased to have presented our census results recently, where for the first time we exceeded 7 million persons here in Massachusetts, leading to the fact that we protected our entire congressional representation in the House and our electoral votes. But this means nothing if the rights of citizens in other parts of the country are also diminished. So therefore, our singular issue until we resolve it is the protection of voters' rights. I've come here this morning to speak to that and that alone, simply because there is nothing more important to achieving the goals that we as a party and we as a people have aspired to for such a long time. I'm proud to lead this effort. I'm proud of the fact that our elections have been held not only with record turnouts, but without any question about the integrity of the process. We've shown in Massachusetts it can be done, and it must be done in our country. As Democrats throughout the country, we must lead this effort. All of us are aware of the challenges that are coming up in 2022 and 2024. There's no question the Republican Party has been reinvigorated and is now seeking to move back into power. We cannot let that happen. But the key to preventing that from happening is let all of our citizens vote with comfort and ease. We must move forward, as I said, in Massachusetts on the same issues of expanding these things permanently and also extending same-day, election day registration to make sure that all of our citizens can vote. In so doing, we guarantee not only the issues that we care about, but the future of our democracy. I pledge to work with you till these things are achieved. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Secretary Galvin. Since taking office 7 years ago, our Attorney General, Maura Healey, has shown herself to be a fearless advocate for civil rights, the environment, corporate responsibility, and the eradication of opiate addiction. A leader among state attorneys general, she's now challenging the Texas law that is undermining a woman's right to terminate her pregnancy. It's with great pleasure that I introduce my colleague, Attorney General Maura Healey.
Hello, Democrats. I so wish we could all be together today. These conventions are one of my favorite days because I get to see so many friends from over the years, friends who know how to build grassroots campaigns and win. There's no question that 2021 has been a challenging year, but we should pause to celebrate one major achievement together. It's the year we got a Democrat back in the White House. At the Attorney General's office, we spent 4 years as the last line of defense against Donald Trump's racist, anti-democratic policies. We stood for the dreamers, for science, for our climate, for the Affordable Care Act, for students, organized labor, women. We stood for the rule of law. We held the line while so many of you fought in the trenches to flip not just the presidency, but Congress too. And now, because of those doors that you knocked and the calls that you made, we've got a chance to build a country that is fairer, more equitable, and actually fulfills the promise of opportunity for everyone. That's what we've been doing at the Attorney General's office. As the people's lawyer, we are taking on some of the most powerful institutions in this country. We're taking on the NRA for the victims of gun violence, and Uber and Lyft on behalf of workers. We're taking on ExxonMobil to protect our climate, and the Sacklers on behalf of families devastated by the opioid crisis. Just last week, we announced that we're challenging Texas for its unconstitutional abortion ban. Let's be clear, states that ban abortion aren't Republican states, they're voter suppression states. The Texas legislature exists as it does because of gerrymandering and the suppression of Black and brown voters. It's why we need Congress to pass the Freedom to Vote Act, the Women's Health Protection Act, and to repeal the discriminatory Hyde Amendment. This brings me to Massachusetts and our governor. I was disappointed the other day when I heard Governor Baker say that he didn't support same-day voter registration because it's too complex. Too complex for who? The single parent working multiple jobs who didn't have time to register? The renter evicted during the pandemic? We're talking about a policy that would enfranchise thousands of people of color, low-income residents, renters, military, and our young people. No, same-day registration isn't too complex. It's fundamental, and we should pass it now. Let's get it done. But his comment also represents a bigger problem. We're in a moment of great challenge, a moment that demands greater urgency. Massachusetts saw the highest increase in food insecurity in the country last year. The median worth for white households in Greater Boston is $250,000. For Black families, it's $8. Our economy, our society, it doesn't work for everyone because it wasn't built for everyone. Systemic racism and misogyny have held back women and Black and brown and Indigenous people for generations. My work has been taking on these injustices. It's what motivated me to leave a big law firm job and join the Attorney General's office as a civil rights lawyer. It's what made me run as a first-time candidate in 2014 and to come to you to ask for your help. It's why I'm so thankful for the opportunity you gave me to take on these injustices as your Attorney General for the past 7 years. It's also why I can tell you this. This is our moment to bring fundamental change. This is Massachusetts' moment to act, its moment to lead. As you know, I'm giving serious thought about my future path and whether I will enter the race for governor. But I know this, in this moment, we need a governor who will speak fully and clearly about the root of these problems and embrace the changes we need to fix them. A governor who declares that student debt is an anchor on the economic futures of Black and brown communities and fights to cancel it. A governor who will ensure early education for every family, because that's how we get women back to work and level the playing field for every child. A governor who won't support Susan Collins and veto the Roe Act, but will speak out for abortion rights in Massachusetts and across this country. A governor who supports the millionaire's tax to make our tax system fairer and to invest in transportation and education for all. A governor who will lead on climate, on workers' rights, on voting rights and civil rights. The time for excuses is over. These aren't too complex, they're fundamental, they're who we are. Yes, it is time for a Democratic governor. I know you have what it takes to realize this vision. Stick to your values, work hard, and don't back down. You did it last year. You can do it again here in Massachusetts. Thank you, Democrats, for all you do. I can't wait to see you soon.
Thank you so much, Attorney General Maura Healey. Deborah Goldberg, our state treasurer, is now in her second term in office. She's as dedicated to ensuring the security of the Commonwealth's finances as she is to that of ordinary families in the Commonwealth. Through her baby bonds program and financial literacy program, she is putting tools to create wealth in the hands of ordinary people. She's also been aggressive in her efforts to secure leadership roles for women in government and also on corporate boards. It's my pleasure to introduce Deborah Goldberg.
Thank you, Massachusetts Democrats. Thank you for your passion and unwavering commitment. And thank you for the hard work you do to advance the issues that matter most. I'm so proud to be from Massachusetts, where we're not afraid to stand up for what is right, what is humane, what does the most good for everyone in this state, even when there is strong opposition. And I am honored to be your treasurer. Economic stability, economic security, and economic empowerment have always been my personal mission, and why I ran for treasurer 7 years ago. And every day, this is the mission that drives everything we do in my offices and throughout the country, working for the people to create historic change. This has been one of the most challenging years in recent memory. While dealing with a public health crisis, we've also been dealing with an economic crisis. Even so, my team, whom I'm so proud of, and I have accomplished so much. Building upon our 12 weeks paid parental leave, as early as last year on March 13th, we put health and safety first when we shut our offices without any furloughs, no layoffs, and are even now maintaining an optional limited return as we monitor the Delta variant, by employing more women and people of color, and even evaluating our department heads on accomplishing diversity, equity, inclusion throughout all of Treasury. We are providing greater opportunities for those who have faced so many barriers before. By providing a seeded savings account through our groundbreaking Baby Steps program, we are working to ensure that every baby born in this state can afford to go to college or vocational and technical training school, which will lead to a good paying job. And then we wrap financial education around the kids and their families to help them avoid crippling debt. And we pivoted our robust empowerment programs to create virtual Money Talk Tuesdays, providing financial crisis information, launch the digital tools, free digital tools, available to everyone throughout the state. And with our public-private partnership, we created a COVID relief program providing support to small businesses, particularly in our gateway cities. As businesses closed, we began attacking the ravages of the She Session for women, particularly for women of color, working with the Massachusetts Women of Color Coalition, Massachusetts Commission on the Status of Women, businesses, industries, and the groups most impacted to develop solutions to prevent this from happening again. Nationally, I led the country's treasurers through the financial crisis, working with the Federal Reserve and the U.S. Treasury to ensure financial relief. And as chair of our country's Democratic treasurers, together we brought common public attention to essential workers' plight on the front lines to help them get PPE, hazard pay, and paid time off. We also went after the fossil fuel producers and worked with partners like Engine One, who then won 3 seats on Exxon's board in order to fight from the inside, pushing to a solo, zero carbon world. And we worked directly with the Biden team to provide the authoritative financial voice for the need of including states, cities, and towns in COVID relief monies, which was completely opposed by every Republican across the board. This is the mission I ran on, and these are the promises I made. Yet, there is still so much we can do to ensure a future we all believe in. Now more than ever, we need to help small businesses rebound and thrive. We must have quality child care for every family and use our collective power to hold businesses accountable for the degradation of our planet's health. The common bond that we all share is the understanding that we are in this together now more than ever. Empowerment and equality. These are our values and what I will continue to fight for. Economic security, economic stability, and economic opportunity for everyone. Thank you, and now let's get to work.
Thank you so much, Treasurer Deborah Goldberg. As your state auditor, it's now my opportunity to offer a few thoughts about what lies ahead. The document adopted today is more than just a recitation of party principles. It's an agenda and a call to action. It's a challenge to address a wide range of truly urgent needs, needs that we and our government, really we as our government, have to address now. They aren't as fashionable as they used to be, but I still love car bumper stickers. One that's been around for a long time reads, "Think globally, act locally." Think globally, act locally. It's not a funny quip, is it? And it's not just an expression of allegiance. It's a moral imperative that's never had such political and social relevance and urgency. Climate change, COVID, hunger, housing, access to education, free and fair elections, human rights, to name just a few, are challenges that cross state and international boundaries. The threats they pose are to peace, human dignity, economic progress, and our very existence on this planet. And they're ones that our congressional delegation is wrestling with now. Even last year's election results, the ousting of the corrupt and retrograde Donald Trump and the gaining of a Democratic majority in the Senate, did not provide a smooth path for the swift resolution of any of these problems. But their impassioned and inspiring activism in Washington doesn't relieve us of our responsibility to do what we can right here in Massachusetts to tackle these ills, because these global challenges are present in our own communities, our very own communities. This platform demonstrates our recognition of our problems, of our responsibilities, and of our willingness to shoulder the burden of finding solutions that are right for Massachusetts. And I pledge, during my remaining 16 months in office as your state auditor, to continue to be, like you, a problem solver. During the past 11 years, my staff and I have demonstrated that this office can do more than expose waste and wrongdoing in state government. Do we still look for misspending by state agencies? Absolutely. Save taxpayers' money? You betcha. But we also ask, what should government be doing that it's not? Why are agencies failing in their missions? Are some citizens facing barriers to accessing services to which they're entitled? Are all people benefiting equally from government programs? And how can we do it better? Asking those questions just in the past 2 years has revealed an inability to determine who gets to participate in juvenile diversion programs. It's detected weaknesses in state agencies' investigations of elderly and disabled persons. And it's found failures in our state's water quality monitoring. But working with the legislature on solutions has resulted just in those past 2 years in facilitating mail-in and early voting, increasing funding for regional schools, promoting local acceptance of solar arrays, and perhaps most importantly, reforming police training and accountability. And speaking of accountability, auditors are agents of accountability. But how do we achieve that? Standing in front of a camera and pointing fingers is really just grandstanding. Demanding the firing of an agency head does nothing to address the systemic problems that underlie bad outcomes in government. That's why this year I'm working to enact legislation I call my accountability agenda. Passage of the legislation will aid your pursuit, as stated in the platform before you, of greater transparency in government by ensuring timely access to information, all the information that auditors need to get to root causes of government's failures, and by requiring agencies to submit corrective action plans. We will greatly enhance transparency and accountability in state government. As I said in my first campaign, I see audits not as weapons to bring down government, but as tools to make it work better and build public trust. We cannot afford to waste our money, and we cannot afford to waste our time. There's too much we have yet to accomplish, as this platform makes clear. And as I close, I'd like to thank you for your support for me over the last 11 years. It continues to be an honor to serve you. And I'd also like to recognize platform co-chairs, Attorney Jay Gonzalez, Sheriff Steve Tompkins, and Attorney Shannon Liss Reardon for their leadership. Thank you, Jay, Steve, Shannon, and all the other platform committee members for the work that brings us here today. Thank you all.
Thank you, Auditor Bump. Thank you. You're such an inspiration. Well, we are about to get into the presentation of our platform for which we're all here today. But first, because we haven't taken a break, we're going to give everyone a 2-minute intermission, and then we will present our platform. We'll see you in 2 minutes. for the presentation of the platform. I can't thank these three people more than enough. Sheriff Steve Tompkins, Shannon Liss Riordan, and Jay Gonzalez for chairing this whole presentation and putting together this statement of values. They have done so much work, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce one of the three chairs, Sheriff Steve Tompkins.
Thank you, Gus. I really appreciate it. And I want to give my thanks to Veronica and the entire staff. I think they've done yeoman's work. Gus was very gracious, excuse me, in acknowledging Jay, Shannon, and I. But in a day in, day out, week in, month in, year in basis, these folk are really carrying the medal for the Democratic Party in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. As mentioned, I am Suffolk County Sheriff Steve Tompkins, one of the co-chairs of the Platform Committee, the Democratic Platform Committee, and I got to tell you, it was an awesome experience. When you talk about civic engagement, when you talk about people rising up to basically and continuously talk about what we as citizens need to move the Commonwealth forward, it was such an honor to be a part of that and an honor to actually listen to, work with, and seriously discuss the important issues that move our nation forward, that move our state and our communities and our families forward. Now, Jay Gonzalez, Shannon Liz Riordan, and I served, the words I just can't find to tell you how heartfelt it is. So without any further ado, we are going to hear from my co-chairs, and they will let you know how they feel about this process, but actually they will also talk to you about the democratic process and what we as Democrats have to do continuously to move the state and this country forward.
Hello, fellow Democrats. At our convention 3 years ago, you gave me the great honor of endorsing my candidacy to serve as your Democratic nominee for governor. I was proud to have the opportunity to represent and advocate for our shared democratic values. I was inspired by and proud to be associated with all of you. And I was, and I continue to be, proud of the campaign we built together. Over the last few months, I've had the honor of serving as co-chair of the Democratic Party Platform Committee, an experience which reconnected me with many friends, inspired me, and renewed and strengthened my pride in being a Democrat. I had the privilege of serving with my fellow co-chairs, Sheriff Steve Tompkins and Shannon Liss Riordan, and with the 41 other members of the Platform Committee, all of whom are committed and active Democrats who represent the breadth and depth of interests and perspectives that contribute to the strength of our great Democratic Party. We were assisted by the able and committed staff of the Massachusetts Democratic Party, for whom we should all be grateful. Our task was to draft the 2021 Democratic Party platform for your consideration. We heard testimony at 7 public hearings, and we solicited written testimony from hundreds of Democrats across the Commonwealth. Informed by that testimony, the Platform Committee met multiple times and engaged in spirited debate. So spirited that we even needed an extra 4-hour meeting to complete a draft of the Democratic Party platform. We sent that draft to all of you for your consideration, amendment, and adoption in its final form. I was so grateful to be a part of this process. We heard from many passionate, thoughtful, and committed Democrats who care deeply about pushing our party, our state, and our nation forward. Democrats who know that there's much more we can and must do to take on the big challenges we face. And Democrats who understand that the party platform matters. It matters because it's the vehicle through which we as Democrats state our collective values, ideals, and beliefs. It matters because it's the vehicle through which we state our expectations of Democratic candidates, elected officials, and of ourselves. And it matters because it's the vehicle through which we, the Democratic Party, a party composed of a broad and diverse range of interests and people, come together and speak with one voice in furtherance of a common agenda. Thanks to all of you who participated in this process. We have a 2021 party platform that reflects the best of who we are as a party. It says that we are not satisfied with the status quo. It says that we must aim high to take on the big challenges we face and to stand up for every single person. And it reflects our aspirations for a stronger, more equitable, more inclusive, and more progressive Commonwealth. I am proud of this platform, and I hope you are too. Today, let's celebrate it. But the aspirations in our platform will only be meaningful if we take the actions necessary to make them a reality, to advocate for them, to elect Democrats who will enact them. And so while we celebrate this document today, let's also commit to taking the steps necessary and doing the work necessary to give life to those aspirations, and in doing so, to make a meaningful difference for the people of Massachusetts. Thank you for all you do to further and support our democratic values. I am proud to be a Democrat, and I'm proud to be associated with all of you.
Good morning. My name is Shannon Liss Reardon. I was honored to be asked to co-chair this platform process this year. What our platform stands for is the fight that I have been in my entire life, fighting for women's rights, the environment, and labor rights. And as a labor lawyer, I am here to tell you that we are now at a critical moment in the labor movement. We are facing an existential threat to the future of work. So I am proud that our platform contains a plank to stand up for and defend our employment laws here in Massachusetts. Massachusetts is known for having some of the strongest employment rights in the country. But some large tech companies, including Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, are coming to Massachusetts to try to tear down these rights and rewrite our labor laws in order to line their own pockets. So in the labor and workforce section of our platform, we have included a commitment to stopping efforts by these app-based employers to misclassify gig economy workers as independent contractors. This issue is critical, not just for Uber and Lyft drivers, but for all of us, for all work in the Commonwealth. And the reason is that these companies think they can come in and use their money to buy our laws and erode the strong protections that we have fought for decades and built up for workers that is crucial to the future of work and dignity in our Commonwealth and in our country. These companies, Uber, other giant tech companies, they're not paying their fair share, they're not paying employment taxes, they don't pay into unemployment or workers' comp. Their workers are not receiving minimum wage. I've represented these workers for many years. Some of them sleep in their cars because they can't afford a place to live. And these companies are putting all the burdens of expenses of employment on the workers and on us as taxpayers. And now they want to carve out a permanent exception for themselves from our laws, and we cannot let them do that. They're asking Massachusetts legislators and voters next year to give them a special exemption from our labor laws, our civil rights laws, and our consumer protection laws. They're going to be doing this in the legislature and in a ballot campaign next year that may be on the ballot in November 2022. And if they get away with this, believe me, every industry will be standing in line to exempt themselves next from our laws. So this is not just about Uber and Lyft and gig economy companies. This is about all work. This is about all of our jobs. This attempt would create a permanent underclass of low-wage, mostly black, brown, and immigrant workers by allowing these companies to get away with paying less than minimum wage and not providing any of benefits that we have under our laws, under the deception that the only way these workers can maintain flexibility in their work is by giving up all of their rights under our employment laws. So I thank you. I thank the party and my fellow platform co-chairs for giving me this opportunity to speak to you about this crucial issue. I was proud to work on our platform this year, and now that the platform is complete, the real work begins. We have to make it a reality. I look forward to working with you on that continued fight. Thank you so much.
I offer a heartfelt thanks to both Jay and Shannon for being a part of this process, and for Gus and others for inviting me to join those two to really move this along. Now, if anything good came out of the 2016 elections, is that civic engagement or re-engagement came to the forefront. And we have a host of young Democrats that are ready to take up the charge, to fight for what's right, to fight for what's true and just. And the individual that I'm about to introduce is a young lady who is vibrant in her community and has a lot to say and is a rising star in the Democratic Party, and that is State Representative Liz Miranda.
What's up, Massachusetts Democratic Party? It's Representative Liz Miranda, hailing from the best district in the Commonwealth, the mighty 5th Suffolk District, representing communities of Roxbury and Dorchester here in Boston. I'm here today to talk to you about the Massachusetts Democratic Party's platform on children and families. And guess what? Since I'm a millennial, or I think I am, I'm going to be using my cell phone. So the platform already has great tenets. And 4 of the tenets that I work on every day here in Massachusetts are high quality, affordable childcare, an end to racial disparities in maternal health, legislation and programs that address food, security, and hunger, and lastly, programs that address children aging out of the foster care system. In my district and communities of color across the state of Massachusetts, the state of maternal health care is in crisis. But the good news is that we have the power to change it. Last session, I was so proud to usher in the first ever Black women-centered commission here in Massachusetts, the Racial Inequities Commission in Maternal Health, with Representatives Kay Kahn and Senator Becca Rausch. And this session, the work continues to extend postpartum coverage post 60 days to a year, including immigrant women, and fighting to make sure that doulas and midwives are covered through Medicaid and given the dignity as professionals that they deserve in our full spectrum of care. See, medical racism is still prevalent and very real, even here in Massachusetts. But empowering those most impacted to lead the solutions we need forward will bring us all closer to the day that no one given birth will die. From fighting for stronger early child care for all communities in Massachusetts, to ensuring that women, mothers, and birthing people are supported throughout their reproductive health care at every single point, and investing in community-based violence prevention programs in the most impacted communities, just like the 5th Suffolk District. This platform can support whole families and whole communities. We can ensure that all children have a healthy diet and food security by closing the SNAP gap here in Massachusetts. This platform is exactly what we need. It's about every family saying that we all belong, undocumented and mixed status families too, low income families too, and those led by women or single households. We can fight for an agenda that works for every single family here in Massachusetts. So I just wanted to say what's up. I wanted to talk about this platform, and I wanted to make sure that you had an amazing convention. See you guys later.
Thank you so very much, Rep. Miranda. She is extraordinary. Please keep your eyes open for her. She is a rising star. Now, there are a number of salient issues that impact the Commonwealth. We can look at housing. We could look at healthcare. We could look at criminal justice, where I live every single day. But another issue that's really important is the economy, and how the economy is going to be spread across the land in a fair and equitable way for all of our citizens. And the next individual up to the mic to speak is Shagun Idawu, who is the president and CEO of the Black Economic Council of Massachusetts, better known as BECMA.
Greetings to all of the delegates and Democrats joining us today. My name is Shagun Idawu, and I have the privilege of serving as the president and CEO of BECMA, or the Black Economic Council of Massachusetts. Our organization was founded just 6 years ago as a way to advance the economic well-being of Black businesses, organizations, and people And we strive to achieve this mission but through our advocacy, business and leadership development, and building strategic partnerships. Today, we represent the over 2,000 black firms that are keeping 17,000 residents off of unemployment and generating $2 billion every single year. I'm here today to urge your support for the economic justice and growth part of your platform. It's going to be vitally important that if we're going to ensure we have an equitable economic recovery, that every part of this platform is implemented from town and city halls all the way up to the state legislature. Our businesses play a vital role in keeping our economy going, and they don't just impact black and brown communities, they impact our Commonwealth overall. We at Beckman know that the development of some communities cannot coexist with the underdevelopment of others. And so for us, we know that it's going to be important that we make investments that allow for black and brown entrepreneurs and business owners to start new businesses or support existing businesses, because we know that it's our ventures that help to employ many black and brown people in our community today. And so, as I leave all of you to think on these things, I want to share a proverb that was shared with me just a few short years ago, that if we want 1 year of prosperity, grow grain. If we want 10 years of prosperity, grow trees. But if we want 100 years of prosperity, grow people. I'm looking forward to working with all of you as we work to ensure the future of our Commonwealth for many generations to come. Thank you, and I look forward to working with you shortly.
Thank you, Shagun. Once again, there is another rising star in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Dare I say again, keep your eyes open for this young man. He's going to make strides, and he's going to make changes, and they're going to be important changes. All of the issues of importance are based in one thing, in my estimation, and that is education, education, education. And the next person up to the microphone is Jessica Tang, the president of the Boston Teachers Union.
Good morning, MassDems delegates, alternates, and guests. Greetings from the Boston Teachers Union. My name is Jessica Tang, and I'm a proud Boston Public Schools middle school social studies teacher, currently serving as the president of the 10,000-member-strong Boston Teachers Union. I'm also thrilled to present this year's Massachusetts Dems education platform, and I'd like to thank everyone on the committee who took so much time to create such a comprehensive vision of what all of our students deserve in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. This platform begins with a vision. It reads, Massachusetts residents have the right to a high-quality public education from birth through adulthood. Our educators deserve the same respect as any other professional, and we recognize the role they play in shaping our children, the future of the Commonwealth, and the quality of our democracy. And as MassDems, we need to fight for public education that is fully funded and free to all, including high-quality early public education, full-day kindergarten, vocational technical education, and higher education, because education is a human right. In order to see this vision through, we need adequate resources, instruction, and support to ensure that all students can read proficiently by the 3rd grade. Because as educators, we know that we're teaching to read until the 3rd grade, and after the 3rd grade, we're reading to learn. Closing opportunity gaps must be a priority. We must close the gaps that disproportionately affect students of color, Indigenous students, low-income students, English language learners, students with disabilities, and students in the Commonwealth's gateway cities. We have to make sure we have a rich and varied curriculum, and that includes not just the tested subjects, but also science, technology, engineering, arts, and of course, mathematics curriculum and STEAM education. And we have to end the state's use of punitive high-stakes testing. We cannot continue to over-regulate under-resourced districts that disproportionately serve low-income and students of color. This is just a few of the points of the 25-point platform that is being presented here today. We know that in Massachusetts that we have been leaders. We've been leaders not in terms of just providing high-quality education, but also funding education, for example, through the recently passed Student Opportunities Act. And we have to also continue to be leaders in protecting public education from privatization. All of our students, no matter their zip code, deserve a quality education, and that is from birth through higher ed. And there are many more points that also address the needs of our higher education platform as well. And that includes ending student debt. So again, I thank you all for being here. I hope that you will support this year's education platform and take the time to read it all because we need to continue to be leaders, not just in Massachusetts and in this nation when we talk about public education. And democracy, public education, and MassDems all go hand in hand. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Jessica. One of the other hats that I wear is I am the chairman of the Board of Trustees at Roxbury Community College. So when you talk about education, we often talk about the academic track, the early education track, the STEAM track, and the vocational education track. We really have to look at Voc Ed because a lot of kids can really do well for themselves, and adults can do well for themselves along all of those tracks, but Voc Ed is crucially important. The next person up to the mic is Mary Oberding. She is the Hampshire County Registrar of Deeds and a very strong advocate. Did I say strong? Strong advocate for women's rights.
Greetings, Massachusetts delegates. I am Mary Oberding, elected Register of Deeds for Hampshire County in Western Mass. Working in public service, I am acutely aware of the need for ethics and transparency in both the campaigns and in the public offices in which we serve. Thank you to the Massachusetts Democrats for asking me to speak today on ethics and transparency in our party platform. Thank you to the chairs of this committee, Jay Gonzalez, Shannon Lees Reardon, and Sheriff Steve Tompkins. I am grateful for your dedicated leadership and your extraordinary patience as you led our remote hearings. Thank you also to all of the people who testified at the committee with your sincere and thoughtful insights into the future of our Democratic Party. In listening to your testimony, it was clear that ethics and transparency was the focus of many of your concerns and comments. Some current Massachusetts laws provide a template for open and transparent government. These regulations would not exist without the concerted effort of Democratic activists just like you who are gathered here today at this convention. They include requirements for publicly available reporting on campaign and lobbyist expenses. They also include required ethics training for elected officials and Commonwealth employees, annual financial disclosure reporting for elected officials, and rigorous open meeting laws that include meetings even at the municipal level. And existing laws help us to inform new ones. Right now, before this general court, is a bill in the House and Senate filed to allow child care expenses to be covered by campaign funds. Current campaign finance laws tell us that a candidate for public office can use their campaign funds to rent a tuxedo, or 2 or 3. So existing disclosures demonstrate a gender bias in current law. Yet covering childcare expenses would benefit both parents and families. If childcare expenses were covered, transparency requirements would have the additional benefit of ensuring equity for candidates and provide useful campaign expense data. More importantly, laws governing ethics and transparency benefit candidates and office holders because they demonstrate that the majority of them do comply with their duty to disclose. Laws regarding openness in government must be reasonable. The committee was mindful that the limits of staffing, budgets, and the availability of technology be taken into account for all levels of government. In implementing transparency laws for the 3 branches of government, care must be taken around privacy concerns and ensure that laws are not abused, for that is not the intent of any effort at a more open and accessible government. Continuous improvements to those laws were a common theme in testimony. Some planks for this platform are the result of the times in which we live, and they include overturning Citizens United, streaming legislative committee hearings and allowing Zoom testimony, public financing of partisan elections, access to voting records of legislators, access to substantive legislation before votes are taken, legislative staff compensation commensurate with their job duties, and my personal favorite, presidential candidates must disclose their tax returns in order to be on the ballot in Massachusetts elections. As a party, we recognize our shared goal and pledge our efforts to act on our stated beliefs. Elected Democrats should positively act in good faith in furtherance of our interests as described in the 2021 Democratic Party platform. Thank you.
So in listening to the presenters that have spoken thus far, you can get a sense of how Democrats feel about those very salient issues that I spoke to a few moments ago, and their desire to work collectively and collaboratively to move this Commonwealth forward. The next young man to speak is a gentleman that I met several years ago. Not only did I like him, but I had an opportunity to support him in several of his runs for office, and that would be Haverhill State Representative Mr. Andy Vargas.
Hey everybody, this is Andy Vargas, State Representative for the 3rd Essex District here in Massachusetts. I represent the city of Haverhill. It's great to be here with you all virtually to talk about housing, an issue that has to be a core component for us as Democrats. It is a racial justice issue, it is a climate justice issue, it is an economic justice issue. And we as Democrats need to make sure that we stand for all tenants, for small landlords, for homeowners, and for all those that want to pursue the American dream and owning their own home and building some equity in for their families. As Democrats, we have a responsibility to make sure that everybody in the Commonwealth can afford safe and stable housing. That's what my family found here in Massachusetts. My parents met each other in Cambridge, Massachusetts, after my families came from the Dominican Republic, and they rented a one-bedroom apartment in Cambridge. And when it got too expensive, they found a home that they could afford in Haverhill, Massachusetts. That home was under $200,000, and it was the first home they were able to afford, and the home where they raised me and my brother and my sister. That made a world of a difference in the outcomes for myself, my friends, and my family members who didn't have the same exact opportunity that I did to grow up in a home that was stable, that was safe, a home that my family owned. We need to make sure that that dream, that possibility, that opportunity is possible for everyone in the Commonwealth. So thank you for joining us at the Democratic Convention. I look forward to being your partner on housing so we can build more transit-oriented development, so that we can get rid of zoning restrictions that are inhibiting housing production, and so that our housing production can reflect our sustainability priorities and build a Commonwealth that everybody can afford to live in.
Thank you so very much, Andy, and thank you for speaking to the need for quality, affordable housing, or dare I say, housing that's affordable, because sometimes those two get mixed up. The next gentleman up to the microphone is someone that we all know and is so energizing and so forthright in what's right and true and just. Dare I say those words again, but I will warn you, please buckle up your seatbelt, because this gentleman can really bring it. And that would be the president of the AFL-CIO, Mr. Steve Tolman.
Hello, fellow Democrats. My name is Steve Tolman, and I am the president of the Massachusetts AFL-CIO. On behalf of our 500,000 members, let me say how wonderful it is to be with all of you here at the Democratic Convention. Special thanks to our chairman, Gus Bickford, and his leadership team. And certainly special thanks to our platform committee and the co-chairs, as well as all of the members, for implementing an effective and ambitious platform. Here at the Mass AFL-CIO, we fight every day to ensure that working families have access to good pay and good jobs with benefits. As you know, the labor movement lost a legend this summer. Our national AFL-CIO president, Rich Trumka, passed away while camping with his grandchildren. He was a fierce leader. No other leader like him in our nation's history. He was out of the mine workers, and he gave his heart and soul to everything he did. And through every struggle, we know there are silver linings. and the Mass AFL-CIO is now being led by its first female president, Liz Schuler. She worked side by side with Rich for 12 years, and we're pretty confident that she is going to be a fierce and competitive leader and one that won't let us down. We have so much to fight for all across America, sisters and brothers. Corner office billionaires and millionaires continue to grow richer off our backs, all while pushing their radical anti-worker agenda. However, there is good news. Last November, we elected the absolute best president for working families probably since the Great Depression. And we judge him by his appointments for cabinets, and most importantly, we're most proud of our new Secretary of Labor, Martin J. Walsh. Sisters and brothers, along with Joe Biden and his new administration, we also have the PRO Act, which we are so proud of. The best legislation on behalf of working families in probably 100 years. The PRO Act levels the playing field for organizing drives. It identifies how you clarify who an independent contractor is. That's the law out of the Massachusetts laws, and is now in the PRO Act going national. They know that they want to make an independent contractor law because it's important, and it's very, very important here in Massachusetts. We want to thank our entire congressional delegation in the House of Representatives for supporting the PRO Act, and now it's time to get it passed through the U.S. Senate. Closer to home here in Massachusetts, sisters and brothers, we are facing a battle like none other. Big tech companies like Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash, and Instacart have been breaking the law in Massachusetts by misclassifying and exploiting their workers. Just last year, at the height of the pandemic, in California, they spent $225 million to mislead voters into passing a bogus law, which was just deemed unconstitutional by the top courts in the state of California. And now they are trying to rewrite Massachusetts law so they can keep lining their pockets on the backs of workers. I implore all Democrats to pay attention to this issue and get involved. Allowing app-based businesses to skirt the law and misclassify employees sets a dangerous precedent, and there may be no turning back from it. In Massachusetts, you will be held accountable, and we will hold these companies accountable to follow the law, just like every other business in Massachusetts. We will organize, we will stand up against them, and we will fight. But we need your help. We cannot do this alone. They spent $250 million with a B dollars in California. They've already pledged to spend over $100 million here in Massachusetts. I hope you're with me. If this was live, I would say, well, you're with me. And I hope you're with me because we need to fight these companies and stand up for the wage and hour laws that are trying to be changed by the billionaires and millionaires. Sisters and brothers, I'm honored to be with the AFL-CIO. I'm honored to be a Democrat, and I'm honored to stand with each and every one of you. Let's have a great convention.
Sisters and brothers, I want to say to you that I am honored to know Steve Tolman. He is one of the best of the best. Let me stop. Years ago, I went to see Stevie at his house. We had a conversation, and as I was leaving, I saw a piano. And I said, Steve, I didn't know you played the piano. Mistake. I was held captive for the next half hour while Steve played me a variety of songs, and he's a good pianist as well as a good leader. The next person up to speak is also a good leader, dare I say a great leader. Not only is he a medical doctor, he's a Fulbright scholar, and he is the state rep for this great Commonwealth. He'll tell you what district that is, and that would be State Rep John Santiago.
Thank you, Sheriff Tompkins. Good afternoon, fellow Democrats. It is such an honor to be here with you today to move forward with the important task of putting down our values and vision to pen and paper. My name is John Santiago, and I'm a state representative and an emergency room doctor from Boston, whose pathway to politics has been inspired by the very values that form the core of this platform, especially when it comes to healthcare. You see, healthcare and the need for greater access and equity has been my life's purpose. And for me, it began when my uncle lost his battle to AIDS at the tender age of 36. A young Latino man full of potential. His only issue was that he was poor and he couldn't get quality care. But it wasn't merely the fact that his life was taken too soon. It was the realization that his death had as much to do with the stigmatized virus as it had with poverty, injustice, and the lack of opportunity. You see, the real culprit was inequity. An inequity so vast and so pervasive that I still see it play out in its most violent forms in my emergency room. When my uncle passed, those feelings of injustice lit a fire to me. I wanted to serve those most in need, and I'd go on to do just that, first with the Peace Corps and then to the Army, and now as an ER doc and state representative. Treating patients over the past years has crystallized those lessons learned after my uncle passed. It taught me that the primary reason why most people come to the ER is but for an acute exacerbation of what is happening in their community. It is ultimately the poverty, the violence, the environmental degradation, the lack of housing and education that will manifest into a life-threatening illness. And over the years, no matter how many lives I save, patients continue to flood my ER because as a community and as a government, we have not done enough. And that sad truth has only been magnified by COVID-19. What these past 18 months have done during the pandemic is lay bare our vulnerabilities. I know so because I've heard it in your stories throughout the COVID surge. For those of you whose lives have been impacted by the virus, my thoughts are with you. And to those of you who have been similarly affected by coexisting epidemics, mental health illness, substance use disorder, or just can't afford the care that you deserve, I hear you. But what I can tell you is that there's hope. I found it when our cities and towns came together to combat COVID-19. I found it when we took a 50-year-old gentleman off a ventilator and discharged him home to see his wife and kids. I found it when we finally were able to put shots into people's arms to fight back against COVID-19. And I find it in this very platform we have before us. Because today, we have a platform that shines a light on what is possible, that challenges us, inspires us, and calls us to fight for a more equitable and just healthcare system. It's a platform that puts public health over politics, one that values a woman's right to choose and will never let fear or misogyny be the rule of law. It's a platform that wants us to get at the root cause of disease, one that is patient-centered and understands that parity in mental health and substance use disorder must pass. It is a platform that boldly takes on inequity and will address health disparities across all racial, ethnic, regional, and sex-based differences. And finally, it's a platform that reminds me why I decided to take the leap from the ER to the Massachusetts State House, to pass bold policies and take us to a place where a single-payer system will finally allow both doctor and patient to prioritize health over cost. The Massachusetts Democratic Party and this powerful platform represent the very best of what this Commonwealth stands for. And I hope that you'll join me in supporting it and fighting for a more just and equitable healthcare system. Thank you.
You know, we have all heard of Mass and Cass and what's going on down in the South End of Boston with so many people that are suffering from mental health issues, substance abuse issues, and homelessness. And I will say this, Representative Santiago was one of the first advocates to show up to ask us all that live and work in that neighborhood how he could be of assistance. I thank him from the bottom of my heart, and I know that this is a gentleman who will always, always be dedicated to moving society and its people forward. So thank you so much, Representative Santiago. Next up to the microphone will be NARAL Executive Director Becca Hart-Holder.
Hello, Massachusetts Democrats. My name is Rebecca Hart-Holder, and I am the Executive Director of NARAL Pro-Choice Massachusetts, the Commonwealth's leading reproductive freedom advocacy organization. I am so proud to be here as the Massachusetts Democrats gather today to stand up for a reproductive freedom, rights, and justice platform. Last September, shortly after Justice Ginsburg's death, the legislature passed the Roe Act, stepping up to remove politically motivated barriers to abortion care and to make sure that the right to safe, legal abortion care would be protected in Massachusetts. But the MassDems are not stopping at the Roe Act. Reproductive rights and justice will now be an official plank of the party's platform. Reproductive freedom is not just a winning message across the Commonwealth. It is a critical component to achieving gender equality. And let's be clear, it's about more than just expanding abortion access. It's about making sure that regardless of your zip code, your bank account, your race, your immigration status, or who you love, you can access the reproductive health care you need, period. This is an intersectional fight, a fight that implicates not just the right to privacy, but also voting rights, LGBTQ rights, racial justice, and immigrants' rights, to name a few. Here's our pledge. In the years to come, we will eradicate racial inequities in maternal health care, get rid of copays and cost sharing for all pregnancy-related care, fight for access to universal pre-K, and ensure inclusive and comprehensive consent-based sexuality education is taught in our schools. Nationally, the stakes for reproductive freedom have never been higher. Like so many people across the country, I am heartbroken, I am outraged, and I am scared by the vile attack on abortion access from Texas. So let's call SB 8 for what it is, a calculated, insidious law designed by the Texas legislature to strip away the rights of pregnant people and set back gender equality by decades. This law is rooted in misogyny, not morality. It does not protect patients, it does not support providers, and it does not comport with best medical practices. It endangers patients and promotes anti-abortion vigilantism by empowering people to sue anyone who helps a patient access abortion care after 6 weeks. This state-sanctioned cruelty was given the stamp of approval by our Supreme Court, an institution taken hostage by anti-choice and far-right forces. This decision is a harbinger of what's to come when the court hears Dobbs v. Jackson, a case concerning a 15-week Mississippi abortion ban. This is the most consequential challenge to abortion rights in the last 30 years. And for the better part of a decade, advocates have warned about the threats to Roe, and for years those warnings have fallen on deaf ears. All the while, far-right and anti-abortion extremists have chipped away at reproductive freedom in legislatures and in courtrooms across the country. Now they are in a position to deliver a death blow to Roe. Texas, Mississippi, and the Supreme Court may feel like some faraway danger, but they're not. They won't stop at abortion. They're coming for LGBTQ rights, gender equality, racial equality, voting rights, and so much more. This is going to be a state-by-state, voter-by-voter grassroots battle. And with this party platform, the Massachusetts Democratic Party is making it clear that we will settle for nothing less than leading the fight. We will grow our pro-choice majority at every level of government, starting with the governor's office. When it comes to reproductive freedom, we know that Charlie Baker is not an ally in this fight. Charlie Baker signed the Contraceptive Access Bill into law in 2017, but where has he been since the cameras disappeared? 4 years later, and the law has yet to be fully implemented, and very few Bay Staters have been able to get the 12-month supply of birth control that they are legally entitled to. In fact, Mass Health itself is failing to implement a law that Baker touted as a critical achievement. And look no further than the Roe Act to know where Charlie Baker stands. We fought for 2 years and weathered a global pandemic in order to send the Roe Act to his desk. The self-proclaimed pro-choice governor vetoed this historic legislation not once, but twice. And both times we overcame his veto because we understand what it means to fight for reproductive freedom. And let's not forget that Charlie Baker endorsed Senator Susan Collins after she voted to elevate Brett Kavanaugh to the High Court, setting the stage for a rollback of the progress we have made towards reproductive freedom. Look, I'll level with you. We have a lot of big and scary fights ahead of us, but I know we will prevail because we are not outnumbered. There are more of us who want a society that embraces freedom, gender equality, science, and love than there are people who cling to misogyny and control. They can be loud, but we can be louder. They can pass laws, but we can overturn them. They can spread inflammatory lies, but we will speak the truth. Our movement is stronger and more powerful than they can even imagine. They want to bring us back into the dark ages, but I know that we have a much brighter future ahead of us in Massachusetts and across the United States, because the Massachusetts Democratic Party is adopting a forward-looking reproductive freedom plank in its platform. This is a national example of how to fight for our rights and how to win. So thank you, Massachusetts, for your commitment to fight for reproductive freedom.
How dare a collective of judges? How dare a collective of legislators? And most importantly, how dare a group of men having to tell women how to have jurisdiction over their own bodies? They were given life. It's their bodies to do as they choose. And it is not right and it is not fair for others to try to take those rights, those human rights away. So I wholeheartedly applaud Ms. Hart-Holder and her organization for fighting to make sure that those judges, those legislators, those men understand that they are not going to win this. Next up to speak to us is a man that I know well, and who I admire. He has done great work as the mayor of Somerville. He is an awesome individual. And if you know him, you know what I'm talking about. And if you don't know him, get to meet him. And that would be Mayor of Somerville, Joseph Curtatone.
Hi, I'm Joe Curtatone, Mayor of Somerville, and I'm here to talk to you about the Democratic Party platform section on transportation and infrastructure. So I'm standing here in Assembly Square, which a decade ago was a post-industrial wasteland. There was literally nothing here outside of some crumbling monuments to urban decay. But as you can see, it's a dramatically different place today. Why? Because we invested in transportation and infrastructure. I'm standing in front of the first new T-station built in the Commonwealth in a generation. Sewers, storm drains, broadband connections, everything around here is new. And we used American Recovery Act money to even rebuild the roadway network throughout the entire district. Thank you, President Obama. And because we were able to build new infrastructure, we were able to partner with a developer to clean up the brownfields and bring in more than 2,000 units of new housing, new retail, and major businesses. In fact, today, there's already been more than $3 billion of investment, and we're just getting started. The biggest employer in the Commonwealth, MGH Brigham, located a headquarters here. Puma located its North American headquarters here. And along with the 6 new Green Line stations coming through Somerville, Somerville is becoming a worldwide hub for life sciences and biomedical in the ever-growing and expanding climate technology and solutions industry. And we are planning to build residential neighborhoods around the periphery of this area with an emphasis on affordable housing. We have even been able to reclaim Somerville's lost waterfront, the Mystic River, which had been lost to rendering and automotive plants long before I was born. We've been able to open up the entire Mystic Fells Reservation. In fact, I get to walk along that area with my dogs, with my family, almost daily. Environmentally conscious public transit, good jobs, affordable housing, public open space. That's what our transportation and infrastructure platform is all about. And you can really see what happens when you make it a reality. And the 21st century is waiting for it to happen if we have the courage, dare to be bold, and lead and make it happen.
Let me offer my sincere apologies to Mayor Joseph Curtatone. I left the E off. So, Joe, I am so sorry, Mayor Joseph Curtatone. Now, you know that saying about the young will lead the way. That's very important. And at this point in this country and in this state's history, our youth, our vibrant, engaged, civically active youth will lead the way. And so speaking for them is the president of the Young Democrats of Massachusetts. That's Ms. Leslie Braxton Campbell.
Good afternoon, delegates, elected officials, and party leaders. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Leslie Braxton Campbell, and I have the honor of serving as the president of the Young Democrats of Massachusetts. I'm thankful for the opportunity to briefly address you today. Thank you to the members of the Platform Committee for all the hard work you did listening and processing testimony. Thank you to our platform co-chairs for your leadership, and thank you to the MassDems staff for your work on putting together this convention. I want to quickly talk about the importance of voting rights and democracy. The late Congressman John Lewis is someone who I, like many others, idolize for his bravery and hard work in regards to voting rights, and we must continue to fight to ensure that we carry on those values and have a fair democracy. In our platform, we have stated voting is a right. Voter registration should be made as easy as possible, polls should be safe and accessible, the process should be quick and efficient, and no eligible voters should be denied access to the polls. And we have committed to many items, including efforts to increase voter participation among underrepresented communities, including rural communities and communities of color, allowing all citizens 16 years of age and older to vote in local elections, and ensuring that democratic proposals get passed in the U.S. Senate by eliminating the filibuster, which we know has a problematic history, and many more. As Young Democrats, we support all of these efforts, especially the ones to elevate youth voices at the ballot box, and we will continue to work to ensure that happens. I want to thank you to all the Democrats who are committed to getting this work done. Thank you for your time today, and happy convention.
Here again, I must offer apologies. I've never met Leslie, and so I did not know that he was a male and not a female. Sir, I offer my sincere apologies to you, and I see that you're an alpha. I'm an iota. We love you, but here we come, brother. No, you guys were first, and we'll leave it at that. Next up is a Democratic State Committee member, Kanan Thiru Vindagam.
In our Democratic platform, there is a section for climate and environmental justice, and that covers how we prioritize the people who need the protection the most. It states in the very first line, a livable future is a human right. We have to protect that right. And what that means is up to you, starting all the way from recycling and composting at a community scale, to changing our food system, to divesting from fossil fuels, and to investing in renewable energy. Right here in East Boston, we have a great example of a solution. We're building a greenhouse that's powered by geothermal energy. That means in the summertime, it's going to be cool, and in the wintertime, it's going to be warm because it gets that heat from a certain depth from the earth, which is always at the low 50s, which is cool in the summer and warm in the winter. So do we have solutions? Yes, we do. Can we build them? Yes, we can. And let's do it. Here we are on the East Boston Mary Ellen Welch Greenway. Behind me is a mural that was done as part of Boston seawalls. You could see the numbers representing the degree increase in temperature, and accordingly you see the shades of blue to show how much water will rise right here in East Boston. And to my left, you see the salt marsh sparrow. That's a bird that lives in the Belle Isle Marsh, which is in Massachusetts, which is in Boston. And that sparrow will not be live if the marsh is not around anymore. There's also the long-eared owl, the short-eared owl, so many different birds that stop by here because it is part of a migration stopping point. So it's a natural space, the Belle Isle Marsh. We have to protect those as part of our platform. Besides working on conservation of energy, besides working on energy efficiency, besides increasing renewable energy consumption, we also have to protect nature because it protects us. And we do that in the platform as well. So let's be comprehensive in how we act on climate, protecting people and protecting nature. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Our next presenter is Trum Nguyen, State Representative.
Hi everyone, I'm Trum Nguyen, State Representative for the 18th Essex District, and I'm here to talk to you about the racial justice, equal rights, and equal opportunities for all part of the platform. As an immigrant and an Asian American woman, this section is particularly important to me, as I know I'm sure it is to many of you. Coming to this country, not knowing a word of English, my family and I had to face discrimination head on and had to fight for equal treatment and equal opportunity. And in my career as a legal services attorney, I worked with many immigrants and people of color who also had to face discrimination and victimization due to their status. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to run for office, becoming the first Vietnamese American woman elected in Massachusetts. I believe that it is the duty of our government to protect our most vulnerable residents and to offer everyone the opportunity to succeed. And that means we need to fight racism at every single level, not just in the legal system, but in jobs, in housing, in education, and in healthcare access. We have to fight for environmental justice. We have to protect immigrants and offer them the opportunity to succeed. We have to support women, preserving and expanding their reproductive rights and closing the pay gap. We must fight bias and outright violence against the LGBTQ plus people, ensuring that they have the same opportunities as cisgendered people. And we must fight any form of discrimination against people with disabilities, ensuring access, education, and opportunity for all. As a state representative, I embrace these platform planks along with my Democratic colleagues. Together with Attorney General Maura Healey and Senator Adam Hines, I filed legislation to reform our state's hate crime laws to ensure that we hold perpetrators accountable who continue to attack people because of their race, color, religion, national origin, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identity, or disability. And we're looking forward to adding gender and immigration status as protected classes. Hate crimes terrorize not only individuals, but entire communities. And we must send a clear message that we will not tolerate hate and violence in any form in our Commonwealth. I've also filed a bill to develop racially and culturally inclusive K-12 curriculum for students of all learning abilities that uplifts the achievements, contributions, and struggles of people of all races, religions, and ethnicities. And as a result of the racial justice bill that we passed last session, I'm co-chairing the committee investigating structural racism in the probation system. We've had some eye-opening testimony so far, and we expect to report our recommendations by the end of the year. Other committees investigating structural racism in the justice system will also offer their reports, and then the work will begin so that we can act on these recommendations. It's essential that we all work together to advance the ideals represented in the racial justice and equal rights sections of the platform. I appreciate the work of the platform committee in drafting this platform, and I'm so grateful to all of you delegates for your involvement and enthusiasm in fighting for these ideals. It is with your support that we will pass legislation to codify these ideals into law. When you vote for this platform, when you stand out in protest of injustice, and when you reach out to your legislators, that is when you start the process of making a difference. You are the voice of the people, and I can assure you that your voices are being heard. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the convention.
You know, let me touch on the issue of immigration for just a quick moment. I remember as a child in school being taught about immigration and the importance of immigration and how this country, the United States of America, opened its arms to people from all around the globe to make this a more vibrant country. So I'm appalled by the fact that the descendants of many of the ancestors from way back that came here as immigrants are now fighting mightily to keep people from crossing the borders and coming into this country for a better life and to make this country stronger, frankly. Let me say this to you. Our differences are our strengths. In case you didn't hear me, let me say this one more time. Our differences are our strengths. Let's keep that forefront because it's very important. The next presenter, the next speaker is Mass Inc.'s Chief Operating Officer, Juana Matias.
It is a pleasure to be with you all virtually today. I'm Juana Matias, COO of Mass Inc., the Commonwealth's only nonpartisan public policy think and action tank, and former state representative for the city of Lawrence. I'm also an immigrant, and my immigrant experience has had a profound impact on my life. That's why I'm honored to be speaking today to the Democratic Party's immigration platform. I'd like to thank the Massachusetts Democratic Party for their work and commitment to advancing the issues of greatest concern to our constituents in the state. I arrived in Boston during a snowstorm in January 1992. I will remember that day for the rest of my life. I was just 5 years of age, and I was terrified. America was a sea of unfamiliar faces, speaking a language I did not understand. Eventually, I learned English. I learned how to dress for the cold, and over time, I learned to love this strange new place. Massachusetts became my home and provided a path to the American dream for myself and family. My immigrant story, however, is not unique. 1 in 6 residents and 1 in 5 workers are immigrants in our Commonwealth. Immigrants make up a vital part of the state's workforce in a range of industries, from healthcare to our services industries and beyond. Immigrants make a vital part of our state's workforce in a range of industries, from healthcare to our service industries and beyond. And immigrant entrepreneurs generate billions in business growth and job growth. Immigrants are our neighbors, our service members, teachers, scientists. They enrich our economy, strengthen our democracy, and make endless contributions to our state. Although immigrants make significant contributions to the social and economic well-being of our state, we still have a considerable distance to go to ensure that every immigrant has the opportunity to reach their potential. Immigrants in our state continue to confront significant disparities in health access and outcomes, income, educational attainment, housing, business growth, and employment. As we consider what this post-pandemic world holds for Massachusetts, now is the moment to call upon bold and transformational change. It's time that we ensure we are creating inclusive communities where immigrants are welcomed and able to thrive, that we provide all, irregardless of their status, access to driver's licenses so all families can meet the needs of their loved ones, that our K-12 immigrant students have access to post-secondary opportunities, and that we make more strategic and larger investments in ESL resources across our state. These are just some of the many solutions before our state and local governments that must be implemented now. These are just some of the many solutions before our state and local governments that need to be implemented now. We must commit to change, but change that combats the status quo for immigrants in our state. We come together today to ensure that all of our institutions are able to deliver on the promise of justice, equality, and opportunity that democracy makes possible for all. That is the charge before us, and I look forward to working with all of you on behalf of immigrants and all people to ensure that our systems do not foreclose on those most in need of opportunities to thrive. Thank you.
Thank you, Juana. So you're familiar with the term rock star. And when you hear rock star, you probably think of a musician. But we also have rock stars in governance. We have rock stars in politics. We have rock stars in public safety. And the next presenter is not only a rock star, but a dear, dear, dear friend of mine. Please welcome Middlesex District Attorney Marian Ryan.
Good afternoon. I am very grateful to Chair Bickford and the Platform Committee for the opportunity today to speak in strong support of the public safety and criminal legal reform plank of the platform. But first, allow me to put it in its proper perspective. We are living through a well-documented global recession of democracy. Since the year 2000, at least 25 nations have lost their status as functioning democracies. And this troubling trend continues to accelerate. Less than 1/5 of the world's population now lives in a free society. Closer to home, the January 6th insurrection, which was no less than an attempt to overturn the results of a free and fair election, placed the crisis of American democracy in stark relief. So, what do these troubling national and international trends have to do with this plank of the platform? I submit that the answer is everything. The degradation of a legal system is usually one of the first indicators that a society is slipping towards authoritarianism. The erosion of fair jury trials, the casting aside of the freedom from unreasonable searches and seizures, and the rapid deterioration of prison conditions are all too familiar symptoms. Against that bleak backdrop, however, remember that individual states have near exclusive control of their criminal legal system. So we, as a party, actually implementing our platform, can mold the Massachusetts criminal legal system into the most fair and the most just system in the world. I truly believe that we can do that. As Democrats, we know that a just criminal legal system can never flow from fear or the desire for retribution. This is our vision. We believe that no person is ever beyond redemption. We believe that the school-to-prison pipeline must be permanently severed. Resources must be spent upstream in a child's life so that our communities flourish, not downstream to fund more prisons. We believe that the criminal legal system has a clear disproportionate impact on certain communities, and that every district attorney and sheriff must apply a racial equity lens to their work. We believe that people struggling with addiction and mental health issues deserve our care, our compassion, and our creative solutions. We believe that the bail system must never be used to create debtors' prisons. We believe that the vast majority of mandatory minimum sentences do not actually keep us safer. We believe that the scourge of gun violence is taking too many of our children and must be responsibly addressed. And we believe that our law enforcement, so many of whom are brave individuals who contribute much, must be appropriately trained and appropriately held accountable. During my tenure, I have learned what can be accomplished by implementing our values and our priorities. I was proud to be the only district attorney who championed in 2017 the omnibus criminal legal system reform legislation. I, along with District Attorney Rollins, brought a federal lawsuit against ICE when, during the Trump administration, that agency created a culture of fear in and around the Commonwealth's courthouses. I've created a first-of-its-kind anti-hate, anti-bias task force led by our new Director of Racial Justice Initiatives to help our office confront criminal and sub-criminal behavior that targets individuals because of their race, ethnicity, or LGBTQIA status. I've reformed our use of cash bail, and I've created pilot programs to provide formerly incarcerated individuals with access to employment, transportation, housing, food, and clothing. You should be very proud of this platform. You should be proud of the elected Democrats who serve you in law enforcement roles. But most of all, you should be proud to be a Massachusetts Democrat. I look forward to continuing this conversation, and until then, stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, District Attorney Ryan. Now, you know, you've heard of those men and women that stand on the wall, that stand by the fence to keep the rest of the citizens in this country safe and free. That's our veterans. That's our servicemen and women who we owe a tremendous debt of gratitude to for all that they do. They give their lives, their limbs, their treasure to make sure that the rest of us can wake up each morning, take care of our families, take care of our communities, go to work, go to school. Crucially important that we say thank you each and every time we see a veteran. And the next presenter is one of those veterans, is a gentleman that I've had the pleasure of knowing for quite some time. He is an awesome individual. That is Mr. Chuck Battle.
Good morning. 4 years ago, I was privileged to be a member of the 2017 MassDems Platform Committee panel. We traveled throughout the Commonwealth listening to the citizens of this great state voice their concerns and what they would like and what they want to be seen or written into a new platform. During this time, I was surprised to notice that there was no mention of the veteran community to and include their families, as well as our Gold Star family communities. I approached the chairman with the idea that we should have a veterans plank in the 2017 platform. He suggested that I put something together. I reached out to a number of veterans in the Commonwealth to see what their concerns were. As a result, a plank was written. You can refer to the proposed veterans plank of 2021, which has not changed much from the original of 2017. Much has taken place in 2017, or since then. We now have a seat on a Democratic National Committee, Veterans and Military Families Outreach Council. We're moving ahead to bring a veterans treatment court to every district court in the Commonwealth. We have a dialogue with our state senator, John Vellis, a veteran and chairperson, Joint Committee on Veteran and Military Affairs. There is a plan in works right now where we want to be able to welcome in those veterans coming back from Afghanistan to get them into the system to make sure that they receive the treatment that they will need. We plan to review the existing state laws that pertain to veterans' benefits. I want to thank you for your time.
So wherever you're at, take a moment to give a round of applause to all of the presenters this morning, this afternoon, and heed their words because they are very important. Let me close out by saying this. Our democracy is under attack. For the people in this room and for the people that can hear my voice, this is not news to you. Some people would have us believe that the real problem started as recently as 2016, but we know different. We know better. Certainly, the election of the former president 4 years ago and the failed coup to hold on to power earlier this year has lowered the bar to an unconscionable depth. But the ongoing battle to subvert the will of the people has been with us for as long as there has been a United States. Since the day that the very first settler set foot in the New World, ours has been a complicated, some might say often hypocritical relationship with freedom, fair play, and self-determination. As we know, some of us a little too well know the doctrine and document that stated all men are created equal and empowered by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Was neither written with all of us in mind, nor was it something that their authors fully ascribed to. Despite their origins, within the desperate attempt to flee tyranny and oppression from the promise of freedom elsewhere. In fact, the stewards of this great country failed to extend such inalienable rights to the people whom they continue to enslave for more than 2 centuries, and the women that they denied the right to vote for more than 3 centuries. Obviously, we have advanced exceedingly far in our marathon journey to equality, justice, and respect for all people. But as it was before 45's ascension and after his eviction, the guarantee of our inalienable rights remain uncertain. This year alone, from January to July, no fewer than 18 states have passed 30 laws designed to restrict voting access, blatantly targeting people of color, people struggling in poverty, and people who vote democratically. So far in 2021, state legislators have passed a record number of laws designed to restrict a woman's right to choose and her ability to decide what she does with her own body. As of July, that number stood at 90 and counting. Across America, The COVID-19 pandemic has caused the deaths of more than 680,000 Americans, with nearly 68% of those deaths claiming people from middle and low-income communities and killing more than 167,000 people in Black and Brown and Asian communities. While much has been made of vaccination hesitancy among people of color, the issue of inadequate, unequal access to quality medical care and unbalanced distribution of the initial round of vaccinations has vastly outweighed any mistrust that people may have had. And as much as the pandemic has revealed the tragic consequences of income inequality and systemic disparity, it has also provided some of our fellow citizens with the opportunity to politicize and demonize the response to this global health crisis by declaring proven scientific viral spread prevention practices such as vaccinations and masking to be a matter of personal rights, even as they actively deny others the ability to practice their own. School officials around the country are attempting to ban books by Black authors and publications that attempt to inform about and address racial inequalities and societal biases. Legislators and elected leaders are actively conspiring to stall true criminal justice and police reform, and Republicans in Congress are attempting to impede progress on critical legislation for COVID relief, major infrastructure improvements that would give a major boost to the working class and more. Sounds like a lot of bad news, right? Well, it is. But I don't think that there's a person in this room or that can hear my voice who doesn't know exactly how to handle bad news. We get into a little something the late, great Congressman Lewis called good trouble. Congressman Lewis knew what history had proven to be true time after time after time. There isn't a single solitary worthwhile gain that we've ever made as a society without fighting for it, without organizing for it, without uniting and pooling our collective strength for it. He knew that all obstacles, no matter how large they might appear, could be overcome by the will of the people, engaging in civic participation, standing shoulder to shoulder against any and all threats to our domestic, democratic way of life. As the late and also great Frederick Douglass once famously said, "If there is no struggle, there is no progress." For those who profess to favor freedom and yet depreciate agitation are men who want crops without plowing up the ground. So let us move forward from this moment and agitate for the change we want to see. Let us continue the struggle for equality, freedom, and fair play. Let us plow up the ground and plant the seeds of change for a more just tomorrow, even as we defend our precious democracy against today's many threats. I want to thank you all for allowing me and Jay and Shannon to be a part of this process. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you, Sheriff, and thank you to all of the members of the Platform Committee. Thank you to Jay and Shannon, and thank you to our speakers. I hope you are all as overwhelmed as I am about what we heard. And you have all, delegates and alternates, taking a vote on this platform. And the platform has passed 1,116 to 10. So I now gavel in that our platform has passed, 2021 platform. But we've got more. Before we get into our announced candidates for our offices next year, and I heard from some of you a little bit earlier that 2 minutes wasn't enough. We're going to take a 3-minute intermission because we want to keep rolling, but a 3-minute intermission right now. Welcome back. Now we're on to 2022, and boy, do we have some excitement for you. But before I get there, I do want to mention that we haven't been waiting around. We have created this program, Blueprint to 22, which I hope you all look into and be part of, because it's something that we can all do in our communities now, so that when we have that short window after the primary, we're not just waiting around. We're organizing by precincts, we're working in our neighborhoods, and we're doing projects shoulder to shoulder with our neighbors now. We've set up quarterly projects so that you can get precinct coordinators to sign up volunteers. And if we can do that, if we can get each precinct to sign up 25 volunteers who commit to volunteering for the Democratic Party the day after the primary, that's 50,000 volunteers that will work for the nominee of this party, one of the few people you might be hearing today. So I encourage you to go to MassDems /Blueprint to 22 to become part of this very important project. Well, the lifeblood of this party is a bunch of young people who keep us going every day and really do a lot of the work. And they are going to be those who introduce our candidates for next year. And the first person is someone who's worked closely at the party, a Joe Moakley intern, and it's Mavis Fahey to introduce our candidates for governor.
Good morning, fellow Democrats. My name is Mavis Fahey, and I'm one of the thousands of delegates gathered here today for the 2021 Massachusetts Democratic State Convention. I am a current freshman at the Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C., and I hail from the mighty Medway Democratic Town Committee. This past summer, I had the opportunity to intern with the Massachusetts Democratic Party, along with 8 fellow young Democrats, where we were welcomed into the world of MassDems and the countdown to this very day. I remember the first time I stepped into the MassDems headquarters on Beacon Hill, where the staff treated us as members of their team, fellow Democrats ready to put in the elbow grease for our party's ideals in the Commonwealth. Time and time again in that office, I was reminded that our democracy is upheld by the passion and dedication of individual citizens like you and me. The Massachusetts Democratic Party is upheld by those who choose to put in the elbow grease with their Democratic town committees, by standing at local intersections with campaign signs, shaking hands and knocking on doors, and of course, by serving as delegates at the annual Massachusetts Democratic State Convention. With this in mind, it is my pleasure to introduce 3 Massachusetts Democrats who have chosen to roll up their sleeves and transform our democratic ideals into reality. These candidates have put their names forward to run for governor next fall. State Senator Sonia Chang Diaz, former State Senator Ben Downing, and Danielle Allen. Please join me in welcoming Danielle Allen as we all work together to restore Massachusetts Democrats to the corner office next fall.
Thank you, Mavis. Thank you, party leaders, for the hard work making it possible for us to gather safely. Good afternoon, Democrats. We all feel that this is an age of anxiety and despair, a time of adversity and adversarial politics. In fact, we stand at a hinge in history. This is a moment of opportunity for us to seize. The pandemic unstitched our world. We have the chance to stitch it anew. The time is here to build a renewable energy economy that brings sustainability and climate justice. The time is here to build an inclusive, dynamic economy across the whole Commonwealth to connect everyone to opportunity and security. The time is here to secure a foundation for health equity and community wealth building for all. The time is here to secure confidence in our democracy by proving our democracy can deliver for all of us and for our most pressing needs. The time is here for transformation. The revolution started in Massachusetts. The transformation should start here too. I ask for your support in leading it from the corner office. Let's say goodbye to drifting along incrementalism from someone who would rather starve government than steer it strategically. The transformation we need requires hard work and creative strategic investment in basic building blocks: housing, transportation, schools, good jobs, and justice. But the transformation starts from a moral commitment. To paraphrase the poet Reggie Gibson, let's not play oblivious. We have the longest nurses' strike in history, an opioid epidemic that continues unabated, and in Chelsea, the highest municipal COVID mortality rate in the country. It's time for us to reimagine ourselves as one Commonwealth. From Pittsfield to Plymouth, Worcester to Haverhill, North Adams to Provincetown, we need to dig in together, work together on behalf of all of us. We are building a movement for transformation. Our huge problems require a governor with energy and strategic vision, but they also require sustained, powerful commitment from grassroots activists like you. Join us. Together, we can't be beat. For 20 years, I've been building teams and driving strategic creative change. It's what I was made to do. I come from a family with a deep and long tradition of working on behalf of democracy. My great-grandmother was president of the League of Women Voters in Michigan in the 30s. My granddad helped found one of the first NAACP chapters in Northern Florida in the 40s. Where I grew up, regardless of what your day job was, the expectation was always that you were also working in the community on behalf of your community, on behalf of securing empowerment, rights, democracy for all. This is what I have always done. It got super personal in 2009. That's the year I lost my cousin, Michael. Michael was probably the first baby I ever held when he was born in 1979. In 94, when he was 15 and I was a year out of college, he was arrested on a first arrest for an attempted carjacking in Southern California. He served 12 years, and when he got out, I was what I always call cousin on duty, trying to help with housing and school and jobs. I'll never forget sitting with Michael in a hot car on a hot summer's day, weeks after his release, looking at a map, trying to figure out how to put the pieces together. The only job that would consider him in one place, miles away, the only community college program with a path forward for him, miles away in a third direction, the only place with access to affordable housing. Public transportation in between, slow and unreliable. I sat in that hot car with that feeling of dread in my bones, that feeling that you have when you think, I just don't know how these pieces will come together. For Michael, the pieces didn't come together in the end. 2 years after he was first released, he was killed by somebody he met while he was in prison. That was my life's turning point moment. I felt a deep sense of personal failure for Michael's death, but it was a time for digging in and asking the question of why is it, as a society, we are doing such a bad job of helping so many young people make a transition to a healthy adulthood, and especially young men of color. I jumped into justice reform. I became an advocate for cannabis legalization and other aspects of taking apart the war on drugs. That taught me we needed a healthier democracy to get that important work done, a democracy with full voice and representation for everyone. I dug into democracy reform. I became an advocate for ranked choice voting. Same thing when the pandemic hit. I jumped in. I pulled together a big network of experts and practitioners, mayors, and community advocates. Together, we put together the first national policy roadmap advocating for a real ramp-up of public investment in testing and contact tracing. We got policy into federal legislation, and President Biden signed one of our policies into existence via executive order. But that's just the beginning of the story, because the time for transformation is here. The time is here. The pandemic made it crystal clear that we stand at a hinge in history. The time is here. I've been driving change for 20 years with respect for my elders and pleasure and pride in the courage of millennials. I stand at the hinge of history. I believe it's time for me to step up and step forward and serve. The time is here. I ask for your support. Please don't delay considering your options. The single most precious resource we have for beating the Baker-Polito administration is time. I'm not waiting. I'm working on transformation. Will you join me? Please sign up at allenforma.com. It will take all of us to win the transformation we deserve. Thank you.
Please welcome candidate for governor and former state senator Ben Downing.
My name is Ben Downing. I'm a Pittsfield native and a former senator from Western Mass. a clean energy business leader, dad to 2 toddler boys, Michaela's husband, and these days a proud resident of East Boston. I'm running to be your governor because I'm tired of watching state leaders waste our time. I'm tired of watching a governor with all the popularity and a legislature with all the power refuse to use either to fight for us. Meanwhile, the communities that I grew up in, that I represent, that I live in, they see rents rise and they see jobs leave. They see trains run off the track and air clog. They see childcare wait lists grow longer and higher education grow further out of reach. They see too many state leaders care more about protecting their power than about protecting their people. I'm running to be your governor because I believe Massachusetts' future is limitless, but I know that our time is not. And for too long, the political power in this state, Democrats and Republicans, have acted as though we have a surplus of tomorrows. Like you, I didn't need COVID to show me that wasn't the case. I grew up in Pittsfield, a city that struggled and had to fight for itself. I know what it is to get knocked down. My city got knocked down as I was growing up. GE left and took all the jobs. We were left cleaning up and rebuilding. The message that my generation heard was clear. Study hard and get out. The best days of your hometown are behind it. Unfortunately, I think that story sounds familiar to a lot of folks watching here today. My family got knocked down too, when my dad and my younger brother Nate died suddenly from heart disease less than 10 years apart. They were the center of my world, my role model and my best friend. So I know what it takes to get back up, to grow stronger at the broken places. I know what it feels like to have your community rally around you and hold you up when you don't know if you could stand without them. Loss shaped the kind of person that I am and the leader that I strive to be. It deepened my empathy and fueled my sense of urgency. It pushed me to run for the Senate. I got into a race with a lot of candidates who had longer resumes than me. I was dismissed, like young people too often are, until I won, and then went on to represent the largest district in the Senate for 10 years. There I led efforts to increase clean energy production, to fight poverty and hunger, to expand civil rights protections to our transgender neighbors, and more. I did all that, and I kept a promise I made in that first election and term limited myself. I went to work in clean energy. Michaela and I moved to East Boston and started a family. Malcolm and Eamon joined us, and we learned quickly the only thing more renewable than solar energy is a toddler's commitment to tire and terrify their parents every single day. Now, East Boston and Pittsfield are 150 miles apart. Different in a million ways, but similar at the core. And similar to so many other communities across this state. Tough, striving, creative, generous places that have had to fight much harder than they should to get resources and attention from Beacon Hill. And that's what brings me here today. That's what brings me to this race. Because I have lived and seen the difference that leadership makes. I know what it feels like to be an afterthought, to be written off, to be forgotten. I know exactly who suffers when those in power kick the can down the road. So if we're going to get out of this and rebuild from COVID, if we're going to stop wasting time, then we need a new sense of urgency from all of our leaders, starting with our governor. For the last 7 years, Charlie Baker has squandered opportunity after opportunity to take on the big challenges facing Massachusetts families. On transportation, on climate, on housing, on COVID response, on racial justice. He has all the power, and he hasn't used it on our behalf. And too often, Beacon Hill has cheered him on instead of raising their voices for the too many that have gone unheard. It doesn't have to be this way, but it won't change on its own. That's where we come in. We can change politics in Massachusetts. We can knock down the walls that have let our state government become insular and unresponsive. We can demand leadership as good as the people it claims to serve. I'm challenging all of us to use our power, to lock arms, join forces, and to face our biggest challenges head on. That starts now. That starts with having a governor who sees, who feels, who understands the daily impact of economic inequality, the urgency of our climate crisis, the consequences of racial injustice, and who's ready to do something about it. I'm running to be your governor because I believe the future of Massachusetts is limitless. You know, I know at one point or another, all of us have been knocked down. And as you were, they uttered to you the seductive idea that time heals all wounds. That if we just sit back and wait, the pain will go away. If only it were that easy. No, what you know, what I know, what we know is that healing is active, that recovery takes effort, that rebuilding takes fight and resolve beyond anything you ever knew you had in you. And none of us can do it on our own. I am not here because I healed from my father and my brother's death. I'm here because my community, my family, rallied around me and fought for me. And then I went and fought for them, with them by my side and in my heart. I'm running to be your governor because I believe the future of Massachusetts is limitless, but it's damn past time that we stood up and fought for it. Stood up and fought to eliminate child poverty and hunger. Stood up and fought for a Green New Deal in Massachusetts. Stood up and fought for the Massachusetts we want to live in, the Massachusetts we know is possible. So if you're up for that fight, if you're tired of the status quo and those who accept it, if you believe like I do in my bones that we are capable of so much better, I invite you to join us. My name is Ben Downing. I'm running to be your governor. It's our time to build the Massachusetts we all know is possible. Thank you very much. I'll see you out there.
Welcome candidate for governor, State Senator Sonia Chang Diaz.
Hello, Democrats. I'm Sonia Chang Diaz. I'm a mom, a former public school teacher, a state senator, a grassroots organizer. I am running for governor to build the Commonwealth that you and I both know is possible, and the Commonwealth that we all want our kids to grow up in. I grew up moving between two different worlds as the multiracial child of a single mom in a mostly wealthy white community. My dad, he was an immigrant to this country from Costa Rica. He came with $50 in his pocket. But because he had the help of teachers and lunch ladies and librarians along the way, he made it not only to college, but to space, and became NASA's first Latino astronaut. My mom is a social worker and a woman of faith, and she spent her career helping women and children struggling on the margins of society. Growing up, it was clear my family was different. My classmates had cars and took trips to Europe. We didn't have those things. But I got the same great education as the rest of the kids in my zip code, and for that I am forever grateful. But I also know my story is an exception. So when I graduated from college, knowing full well what a difference this incredible education had made in my life, I wanted to pay that debt forward. So I decided to become a teacher in one of the poorest and the least funded school districts in Massachusetts, Lynn. Every day in Lynn, I could feel the way that the wealth divide impacted my students. Never enough paper in the supply closet, kids coming to school without winter coats, low expectations, too many students on each teacher's roster. I saw the way that state and local government went above and beyond to care for the children of wealthy families like the ones that I had grown up with, but somehow lost that urgency when it came to kids struggling on the margins. State government was choosing not to see them, choosing to abandon my students in Lynn. So I became an organizer. I went out and I organized for the things that would produce change for my students. Voting rights, more women in office, progressive policy. But still, progressive change wasn't coming. So in 2008, I decided to run myself. And to the surprise of all the naysayers, I won. And I became the first Latina to serve in the Massachusetts State Senate. For the 12 years since then, I've been fighting like hell alongside working families. And I found myself, once again, moving between those two worlds, going from fancy boardrooms in the morning to housing development community rooms at night. And in those travels back and forth, I discovered something was missing from the culture on Beacon Hill: urgency. In Massachusetts, we like to consider ourselves the best and the brightest, the most progressive. But the truth is, our systems are failing hundreds of thousands of families. And for the past 7 years, whenever working families have pushed for progress, Charlie Baker has repeatedly blocked, delayed, watered down that progress. That is how today in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, we've got kids who will work for years to earn their degree, but get crushed under a mountain of student debt. We've got moms and dads who wonder whether their babies will inherit a planet that can sustain them. And we've got black and brown kids and their parents who worry that their next encounter with the police will be their last. It does not have to be this way. We are up against tremendous challenges in Massachusetts: a global pandemic, an economy that only works for those at the top, a racial reckoning overdue, the consequences of climate change. My friends, big problems like these demand solutions at a scale to match. If we're going to get that, we have got to stop putting people in charge who are more concerned with holding on to power than doing something with it. This is Massachusetts. We know how to solve big problems. In a state with more millionaires than 46 other states, we for damn sure can pass a millionaire's tax and build a more just economy. And as we see the wealth divide growing across our state, we can overcome it by investing intentionally in economic mobility. And you know what else? There's more. We can and we should be leading on voting rights and health equity and greening our energy use and building a 21st century transit system. We could close the racial wealth divide. Imagine that. Rebuild the middle class and invest in all of our kids. I know that transformational change like this is possible because I have lived it. I have stood alongside advocates and community leaders and so many of you to build a movement across this state. A movement to win real K-12 funding change, even when the Baker-Polito administration said it was impossible. A movement to win transgender equal rights for Bay Staters, even when Charlie Baker opposed it. A movement to win comprehensive criminal justice reform, even when Baker looked the other way on a broken and racist criminal justice system. And now we are building a movement to take on Charlie Baker himself. My campaign is building this movement with grassroots activists, voters of color, working people, young people, progressive voters across this state. Building coalitions, winning coalitions like that is what I have been doing for the past decade plus. I know what is possible. I am running for governor of Massachusetts because I believe that this moment demands, we need to meet this moment with bold solutions and urgency. If that's a future that you believe in, a cause worth rolling up your sleeves and fighting for, I am asking you to join me today. Go to soniachangdiaz.com, sign up to work with us to win, stand up unapologetically for our values. Fairness, dignity, community. That's how we're going to win in November 2022, and that's how we're going to build the Massachusetts that will work for all our families. Democrats, thank you, and let's get to work.
My fellow Democrats, my name is Ted Park, and I'm the president of the College Democrats of Massachusetts, the official college outreach wing of the Massachusetts Democratic Party. In the 2020 election cycle, we were able to see clearer than ever just how important youth engagement is in the political process, with many creditable estimates placing the turnout of voting-eligible youths at over 50%. It was these very individuals, the Democrats and hopeful leaders of tomorrow, who provided the Democratic Party with the important victories across the country, with the Georgia Senate race and the presidency providing clear as day evidence of this achievement. Looking ahead to 2022, it is this age demographic that must be uplifted and appreciated to ensure that a Democrat is the next governor of Massachusetts. To invigorate this voter base, the party needs candidates who are able to push bold ideas with competence and confidence far surpassing that of Governor Baker. Far surpassing the standard, I'm very excited and proud to introduce those who have put their names forward to run for Lieutenant Governor next fall, Brett Barrow and State Representative Dr. Tammy Gouveia. Please welcome candidate for Lieutenant Governor, Brett Barrow.
Good afternoon, delegates. It's an honor and privilege to be with you here today. My name is Brett Barrow, and I'm running for Lieutenant Governor. 2022 is a mission-critical election. Massachusetts is at an inflection point. The decisions we make now will determine the character of the Commonwealth for the next decade and beyond. Yet if we continue to vote for the same people, we'll get the same results. And I don't believe this election should be about the past 4 years or even the past 8 years. I should believe that it's about our vision for the future. The reason I'm running is simple. I believe that Massachusetts can do better. COVID, which still has the Delta, Lambda, and Mu variants to go, has changed our lives forever. There's been over 18,000 Massachusetts deaths from COVID. Our families will miss those who have been deceased prematurely. Our communities will miss what those individuals could have brought in the years ahead. My wife, who's an occupational therapist in one of the Metro West school districts and a member of the Massachusetts Teachers Association, will tell you that our students are struggling to learn remotely during the pandemic. Our families are still trying to find an appropriate work-life balance after a year of working remotely. And many of our businesses, which used to be vibrant parts of our community, have closed their doors forever. And others are still struggling to deal with the changing consumer behaviors and fears from COVID. So the simple fact of the matter is the old normal that we used to live under doesn't exist anymore. Rather, it's up for us to define the new normal we want to achieve in the future. Yet COVID isn't the only issue we confront and that demands our attention. Climate change is an existential threat, and yet it's also an opportunity for Massachusetts to become a leader in the alternative energy field and provide good jobs and good wages. We need the political will to address a whole variety of structural issues that have existed forever and have been exacerbated during the last 2 years. Issues like affordable housing and, frankly, availability of any housing, affordable and accessible daycare for our working families, infrastructure, whether we're talking roads or rails, that need investment. The list goes on and on. In almost every way, Massachusetts can do better. We need leaders who are willing to build a new future and a new tomorrow. Leaders who aren't afraid to bring new ideas to old problems. Leaders who want the future to work for you. Leaders who believe in economic prosperity by investing in Massachusetts. Leaders who recognize that all students would benefit by in-school learning when we institute mask mandates and vaccine passports. Leaders that believe in good jobs that have fair wages and benefits. Leaders that believe in health care being accessible and affordable by moving towards Medicare for all. Quite simply, I think we can do better. I, like many of you, are a product of Massachusetts. I grew up with great privilege in Concord, where I met and married my high school girlfriend. We raised 2 children in Carlisle, and after we became empty nesters, we moved into Boston. We're incredibly fortunate that our children live close to us so that we can see our grandchildren often. I was a small business owner for over 20 years in Orange, Massachusetts, and I'm now on the faculty at Babson College, which is one of the premier institutions for teaching entrepreneurship. The experience I bring is unique. Although I've never run for political office, I do have town government experience. I have small business experience, which is frankly missing from both parties on Beacon Hill. And I bring a new and different perspective to the challenges of the future. I'm an economic optimist because I believe in the intelligence, the tenacity, and resilience of the Massachusetts people. My name's Brett Biro, and I'm running for Lieutenant Governor because I believe that we need better leaders so that we can get better results. Because I believe that Massachusetts can and must do better. Thank you very much.
Please welcome candidate for Lieutenant Governor, State Representative Dr. Tammy Gouveia.
Good afternoon, Massachusetts Democrats. I am Tammy Gouveia, candidate for Lieutenant Governor, and I'm so proud to be speaking to you from my hometown, the city of Lowell, Massachusetts. The city that made me a lifelong Democrat, an activist for positive change, and the principled leader I am today. Thank you so much to the Massachusetts Democratic Party for convening us safely today. And thank you to each of you for your commitment to our Democratic Party and principles. I believe that together we have created the strongest reflection of our values for justice and equity. Our platform is a model for Democrats all across the country as we commit to creating a party that is more inclusive with strong statements against racism, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, and homophobia. We have demonstrated our commitment to our veterans and our working people. And we have included language that is gender neutral and inclusive of our LGBTQ+ community. I have no doubt that together we will achieve the goals that we set forth in this platform. And while our collective efforts have strengthened our party, we know we still have more work to do to become a truly representative and inclusive democracy. And as we continue our inclusive organizing, I have no doubt that together we will reclaim the corner office. For too long, the Baker-Polito administration has failed to lead us through the economic, social, and public health crises of the last 6 years because they have intentionally chosen to prioritize the interests of the wealthy, the influential, and the politically connected, while completely ignoring the needs of so many of our working families, especially our immigrant and low-income neighbors and families and loved ones of color. I am running for Lieutenant Governor because I believe that we deserve leaders in the corner office who put the health and well-being of every single resident at the center of decision-making. As a mom, as a social worker, a policymaker, an organizer, and a doctor of public health, I believe I am best positioned to do just that. In response to the emerging opioid crisis in 2007, I formed the Lowell Roundtable on Substance Abuse Prevention. We leveraged our partnerships, our compassion, and our diverse membership to secure millions in state, federal, and local dollars. And we use those dollars to make investments and to support our young people and to make sure that people who needed treatment had access to it. Within days of the 2016 presidential election, I formed the Massachusetts chapter of the Women's March on Washington. The 10,000 people who marched from Massachusetts in DC have become part of engaged and new Democratic activists. They have been organizing like hell to make sure that we have Democrats in local and state office, and they've been working hard to flip our state's seats from red to blue. And as a state representative, I have championed bold policies to mitigate our climate catastrophe, to increase access to mental health, and to address the opioid crisis, and also to make investments in public and higher education, transportation, and in policies to support our working families. As a doctor of public health, I have called repeatedly on the Baker-Polito administration to increase equitable access to PPEs, vaccines, and rapid antigen tests to ensure that as we reopen our economy and our schools, that we are doing so safely and without leaving anybody behind. I grew up right here in Lowell, Massachusetts. My grandfather was in the Carpenters Union, which put my family on solid economic footing. But my neighbors, my classmates, and my friends were not always as lucky. Some struggled with addiction and domestic violence and had nowhere to turn and no helping hand. Others suffered trauma, racism, xenophobia, and the despair of intergenerational poverty. Many worked multiple jobs and pinched every single penny, just to get to the end of the month to realize that they were falling further and further behind. It was through witnessing and feeling these injustices that I was first inspired to go into public service. When my children were 3 and 6 years old, I became a single parent. While raising my children, I felt the loneliness, the fear and shame of economic instability that so many of our families experience today. I worried about how I would get my kids to school and myself to work if my car broke down. I had $60 for my grocery bill, and sometimes that wasn't even enough. I felt the constant worry about how I was going to pay my medical bills and my utility bills. And I oftentimes went to bed stressed about what the next day would bring, and there were many times that I thought, what am I doing wrong? But then I realized that it is our policies that are wrong. It is our approach to solving those issues that is wrong. And it is the fact that we are leaving so many families behind that is wrong. As the next Lieutenant Governor, I am driven to lead with empathy, to lead with an unwavering commitment to inclusion, and a dedication to put people at the heart of decision-making. I will be a bridge between the corner office and every corner of the Commonwealth. I know what it takes to bring people to the table, to invest in the common good, and to create the transformative, innovative solutions we need to solve our housing crisis, our climate crisis, to ensure that every resident can go to the doctor without getting saddled by medical bills, has reliable and affordable transportation, affordable and high-quality childcare, and equitable access to education, including higher education that is debt-free. As the next Lieutenant Governor, I am committed to creating real solidarity across our state to amplify the needs of our Black, Brown, Indigenous, immigrant, and low-income communities, and to rebuild trust in our state government that takes care of the health of its people. I am committed to being that leader. I am ready to get to work with you and everyone all across our Commonwealth to fight for a just, sustainable, and equitable Massachusetts. I am Tammy Govea, and I look forward to earning your support. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Archie Kukosh. I'm 16 years old from Westboro, Massachusetts. Earlier this year, I had the honor of being elected as chair of Massachusetts High School Democrats, along with my vice chair, Tasia Mazimaka, and our e-board. Massachusetts in many ways serves as a testament to the power of youth organizing. Earlier in 2020, Massachusetts high schoolers hit doors, called phones, and even worked on these campaigns. Two of the most iconic campaigns in history taking place from our own home state. Senator Ed Markey's campaign not only engaged high schoolers all over the state, but all over the country in thousands. Let's use that same power, energy, and drive going to 2022 to lead us to success. And talking about some of those candidates leading us to success, I'm very excited to announce those who have put their names forward to run for auditor next fall. Chris Dempsey and Senators Diana DiZoglio. Please help me in welcoming Senator Diana DiZoglio.
Hi, everyone. My name is Diana DiZoglio, and I'm a state senator here from the Merrimack Valley. I was born to a 17-year-old single mom, and as a young teen parent, my mom worked hard to make ends meet. I graduated from local public schools and then Middlesex Community College right here in Lowell, thanks to our state's investments in families like mine. I then earned a seat at Wellesley College, where I was so grateful to attend, and I was able to attend there based on a financial scholarship. And sure, I worked hard, but these opportunities also existed in my life thanks to countless others who made it a priority to invest in the next generation, regardless of their financial status or their zip code. Those investments in my future inspired me to invest back into the futures of others through community service. As a domestic violence survivor myself, I decided to work in a young teen girls' home, counseling other young survivors of domestic violence and abuse. I volunteered at Girls Inc., helping to run their after-school programs, and I then worked at the United Teen Equality Center, promoting issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion amongst our young people here in the Merrimack Valley. I then took a job working as a legislative aide in the House of Representatives in the hopes of continuing that good work. But during my short time working on Beacon Hill, I was sexually harassed and subsequently dismissed from my position because of that harassment. And in order to collect a very basic standard severance package, upon my departure, it was required that I sign a taxpayer-funded non-disclosure agreement that prevented me from talking about the discrimination and the harassment that I had witnessed and experienced in our own House of Representatives. But I didn't let them get rid of me, and I didn't stay quiet, and I didn't leave state government like I was told to do. I instead decided to run for state representative myself, and a little over a year later, made my way back into that same chamber as the youngest woman serving in the House of Representatives at the time. And friends, when I got elected, I took that responsibility incredibly seriously, and I knew that it was incumbent upon me to use those experiences, to use what I had seen and learned in the House of Representatives, to fight and to advocate for others from our underserved communities who, like my family, or maybe like yours, have been ignored or dismissed or disenfranchised by a system that just isn't working for all families in Massachusetts the way that it could and the way that it should. I took on the Beacon Hill establishment and our Republican governor to end the use and abuse of those taxpayer-funded non-disclosure agreements. And that's a fight that I've continued alongside of my colleagues in the state Senate. Because if I know anything, it's that transparency matters. And if we as Democrats intend to make progress on environmental, racial, social, and economic justice, we need everyone to have a seat at the table, and not just a powerful few. That's why last year, when the governor diverted vaccines away from our local communities and our elderly, our disabled, our immunocompromised, and those without transportation suffered as a result, I stood up and I demanded equity and called for an audit and an investigation into the millions that he spent on no-bid contracts with his friends in the private sector instead of reinvesting those tax dollars in the millions back into our local communities where families could get equitable access. It's also why I've been a vocal advocate of digging deeper into the Holyoke Soldiers' Home tragedy that took the lives of so many based on failures of politically appointed mismanagement. I'm running for state auditor to continue my fight for transparency and accountability because those values matter to me, and I know they matter to you. I'll start by auditing the no-bid contracts given out during the pandemic, shine a light on the abuse of taxpayer-funded non-disclosure agreements across our state government, and continue to speak truth to power and hold the Beacon Hill establishment accountable. But I need your help to get there. So I hope you'll join my campaign for greater transparency and accountability on Beacon Hill by electing me as your next state auditor. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be here with you today, and I do want to end by saying thank you to everyone who worked so hard to put this on today, to allow candidates to share with you our visions. I'm forever grateful for this opportunity today. Thank you, MassDems.
Please welcome candidate for auditor, former Assistant Secretary of Transportation, Chris Dempsey.
Good afternoon, Massachusetts Democrats. Thank you for being a part of this important Democratic Party platform convention. You are the heart and soul of a state party that is a national leader. I'm Chris Dempsey, and I'm running for state auditor because I believe that Massachusetts is the greatest state in the country, and we all deserve a state government to match. The state auditor's office is all about making government more transparent, more accountable, more efficient, and more fair. We've had a tremendous leader in that position for the last 11 years. Auditor Bump has done a wonderful job as a capstone in her career in public service. Thank you, Madam Auditor. I'm the son of public school teachers. They met while teaching at the Martin Luther King School in Boston. They were placed in adjoining classrooms, and they fell in love. So I grew up in a family of educators, and we talked about the importance of public investment. We talked about the fact that they were digging into their own pockets to pay for school supplies for their students, as so many public school teachers still do to this day across the Commonwealth. We asked questions like what's working, what's not working, and how do things need to change? And those are the very questions that you want your state auditor asking. As Assistant Secretary of Transportation for Governor Deval Patrick, I co-founded the program that created smartphone apps that tell you when your bus or train is going to arrive, the very first apps in the entire country. We reformed state government and made it work better for you. Real results, not just rhetoric. And as the co-founder of No Boston Olympics, I led a grassroots campaign going up against some of the most powerful business interests in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We were protecting state taxpayers against a $10 to $15 billion bid that would have drained those resources from more urgent needs like public health and public education. Now, that was a pretty tough campaign. We got outspent 1,500 to 1. But we had two things going for us. Number one, we had the facts on our side, including the fact that the International Olympic Committee was requiring you as taxpayers to cover 100% of the cost overruns. And number two, we had the people of Massachusetts with us. And we saw that as we put good information before the people of Massachusetts, that they got things right. That's what your state auditor does. Digs into the depths of the executive branch of state government, puts good data into the public realm, and allows us to build a stronger Commonwealth through that process. But resume is not enough in this race. You also deserve a state auditor that shares the values of the Democratic Party. And that means never wavering on issues of marriage equality and expanding rights for our transgender neighbors. That means never equivocating on gun control. And that means standing up to make sure that we are protecting the climate and doing what we must do in Massachusetts. As state auditor, I will be the first auditor in the country to incorporate carbon accounting into audits of relevant state agencies. That allows us to hold those agencies accountable and make sure that they are living up to the mandates and requirements that are now on the law. We have a lot to be proud about in Massachusetts, but the last year has shown a bright light on failures and shortcomings of our state government. We've seen that we're not doing enough on the housing crisis, the opioid crisis, the student debt crisis, a frayed social safety net, and basic public services that just aren't delivering in this important moment of recovery. I know that Massachusetts can and must have a state government, a Commonwealth, that fixes those problems and helps everyone to succeed. That's why I'm running for state auditor. Massachusetts Democrats, I ask for your support. Please join us at dempseyforauditor.com to join a campaign that's going to make your state government more transparent, accountable, efficient, and fair. Together, we can do that.
What a great field of candidates. I hope you're all as excited as I am as we get ready to take back the corner office and hold the auditor's office. But before that, we'll have a couple of special elections to work for, and I look forward to working with you in Blueprint to 22. We just have two more things to discuss, the charter and resolutions, but before we get to them, we've got two great state leaders to hear from. I now introduce our Senate President, Karen Spilka.
Hello, Democrats. I'm thrilled to be able to join you for our annual Massachusetts Democratic Convention. We are all sorry that we're not able to be together in person, but we are Democrats. We're always together in spirit, in our values, and in our actions. To me, there's no better time to reaffirm the work we do as Democrats than here at our annual convention. Being on video again makes me feel like not much has changed. and it would be tempting to think that that was true, particularly given the ongoing pandemic that has taken so much from so many. But, and this is important, let's remember from the start where we were last year. Our president was Trump. Mitch McConnell still led the Senate. The murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor were fresh in our minds. And we were just about to lose our beloved Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. In the months between our last meeting and November 2020, we did what Democrats do. We marched, we knocked, we called, we gave, we voted, and we won. Thank God we won. Now, it's easy to think that it's a victory that we have a president and vice president who, honestly, are fully functioning adults. And it is a victory, and we all celebrated. But we know our work doesn't end, and we haven't slowed down. As your Senate president, I see it as my job, and we in the Senate see it as our jobs, to bring the values that we discuss here to life with policy that answers the toughest questions that are before us. We in the Senate pride ourselves on being a progressive legislative body and in working with our colleagues in the legislature to continue to lead the country in smart, common sense actions that help the people of our state. At a time when too few among us praise public servants, I want to pause to thank them. I know how hard they work for you each and every single day. Next year, I hope that we will be back together, and I look forward to supporting a Democratic ticket that will help us lead our Commonwealth forward in an even stronger manner. We have a talented bench of Democrats ready to run, and will need to do whatever we can to help them win. We need to double and even triple down on the work ahead of us to make sure that we build on the successes of 2021. We need to continue to fight for our values and fight to win. That's what Democrats do. So thank you very much. Have a great convention.
Thank you, Senate President Spilka. It's great to work with you. And now I look forward to introducing our new Speaker of the House, Ron Mariano.
Good afternoon, delegates. I am House Speaker Ron Mariano, and it is an honor to be able to speak with you today. I want to start by thanking the party for adapting so quickly to moving our convention online and their tireless work to make sure our process of democracy still happens. Most importantly, I also want to thank you. You are the front lines of debate and advocacy in our Democratic Party. Whether you've been doing this for decades or it's your first convention, the work you do is invaluable, and the people of the Commonwealth are truly better off for it. When I was elected Speaker last December, Massachusetts was in a very different place. Our unemployment rate was almost 7.5%, and hopes of a widely distributed vaccine were only just starting to seem possible. The House of Representatives has worked tirelessly to respond to the pandemic and emerge from this crisis stronger than before. But every resident of the Commonwealth who dutifully followed public health guidance deserves credit for the progress we've made. Each of you that wore a mask when in public, each of you that got vaccinated to help minimize the impact of COVID, the small businesses that adapted and supported their communities, and of course, our essential workers, from our healthcare workers to our grocery store clerks. You are all the heroes of this recovery. Of course, as I talk with you through a screen today, it is clear we still have a long ways to go. But the resiliency of our communities and the participation in the democratic processes by the folks on this call and so many others give me hope. We can and we will create a stronger Massachusetts together. One of our very first accomplishments of this session was passing a landmark climate bill that sets us on a course to net zero emissions by 2050. When Governor Baker vetoed this effort at the end of last session, we responded by refiling it immediately at the start of the new session and making its passage our top priority. When the governor again tried to weaken our bill, we held firm. I am a believer in compromise and in listening, but as you all know, some issues are just too urgent. Climate change is one of those issues. The key to meeting our emissions reduction goals is offshore wind. Massachusetts has the greatest technical potential for offshore wind in the United States, and we have the potential to supply 1/3 of President Biden's national offshore wind target. We've taken important action to facilitate development of this industry in Massachusetts. But we're not done yet. We're in the danger of falling behind our regional neighbors. The House will pass legislation this session to secure our position as a national leader in offshore wind energy. We fought for discretion over the incoming federal money, so a diverse range of voices can have a say in how it's spent, not just the sole voice of the governor. Sometimes progress can take time, and sometimes it is not grand, but it is progress. It makes the lives of the people affected better. In the House, it is our job to corral the voices of the many and find a way to create a Commonwealth that works for everyone. That's why it's so important that the House go back to debating in person in the chamber as soon as possible. And that's why I've insisted that the House lead by example in requiring all members and staff to be vaccinated. I refuse to accept the disingenuous argument made by some of my Republican colleagues that jeopardize public health. You have entrusted us to do this, and it is the honor of a lifetime to lead this body. And for that, I say thank you. Thank you for allowing me some time to speak, and enjoy the rest of your convention.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I really look forward to working with you as we flip another state representative, a special election from red to blue. I appreciate you reaching out. We've just got two more things to address. So now we're on to our charter amendments. This year was an unprecedented year for charter amendments, and I look forward to hearing from our co-chairs, Tyler Carlton and Sandy Bagley.
Hello, how are you, everyone? It's wonderful being with all of you Democrats. It's always a special day when we have a convention. I am Sandy Bagley. I'm from the 1st Suffolk. I'm in Dorchester and Ward 15. And my co-chair?
I'm Tyler Carlton. I hold a youth mail seat on the state committee, and I'm from Salem.
Okay. We're reporting on the charter amendments and the charter amendments committee for this year, for 2021. I want to say that we're a large committee representing all parts of the state, every demographic you can think of, which means that we have a lot of representation of a lot of different points of views and thoughts that come to the committee, and as we look at each of the amendments that are put forth. I do want to say that we all know what a charter is, but we like to look at it as our Constitution. It's the piece that holds us together, says who we are, and just like our Constitution, it doesn't get changed substantially or often, but it keeps current. And within the charter, it has the ability to have charter amendments every year. So, and they happen and get voted on at the convention. So I would like to thank the delegates first for responding to the charter amendments and exercising your vote.
This year, we had a record-breaking 30 amendments that were submitted. Our committee met in late August to hear from proponents, review, and deliberate each of these submissions. After a 6-hour meeting into the early morning, we were proud to recommend 27 amendments for approval. Thank you to the committee membership for their hard work and dedication. Thank you to those that submitted amendments, and thank you, delegates. Because of you, we now have a more clear, inclusive, and modern charter.
Okay. I just want to go back to the charter again because I'm encouraging all delegates and all members of the party to really look to all of the events that happen within the organization of the party itself. I know it sounds a little redundant, so let me just say, from the charter, the rules, the platform, the resolutions, etc., all of that flows from the charter. So just like our Constitution, the charter is something that we should all know and cherish and look at how to make it totally reflect who we are as Democrats at any given time. So once a year, you have this opportunity to participate in the charter process. I hope you do. And I want to thank every delegate that voted and every member of our charter committee. Thank you. And we look forward to you in June of 2022. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy and Tyler. And truly appreciate work, and that was one of the more enjoyable meetings. As we started at 5:30, we decided to break at 6:30 for dinner. We got back at 7:30 and adjourned at 12:03 a.m. And so I truly appreciate the hard work you put in. All the charter amendments did pass, and all the delegates and alternates received the past charter yesterday, and you'll be able to find that on our website going forward. We also received one resolution regarding employee ownership. We have two resolutions chairs, Joe Kelly and Mary Ann Rutter. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Mary Ann Rutter, one of our resolutions committee chairs.
Hello, delegates. It's a great honor for me to be with you today. My name's Mary Ann Rutter. I'm a caucus member of the State Committee from the 1st Essex District. And on behalf of Joe Kelly and myself, I want to thank our very hardworking and attentive committee. A resolution is a non-binding statement, as you know, of policy or action that's brought before the convention body or at other times before the State Committee for a vote. The process for submitting resolutions always begins with a deadline, and for this convention, one resolution was submitted to the party by 5 p.m. on August 25th. The subcommittee met the very next day to take up the resolution and decide whether or not to recommend it to you for your vote. A bit more about the process. The agreed upon rules of this convention state that only resolutions that the subcommittee recommend for a supporting vote would be presented to you. At other times, we would have held hearings, but given that we're focusing at this convention on the platform, it made sense to dispense with that. But rules were nevertheless in place for dissenting views. If our subcommittee had decided not to recommend the resolution to the body of delegates, proponents could appeal to the body if a minimum number of 200 certified delegates agreed to support that effort. So there was a place in process for dissent, and a secure voting regimen, as you all experienced, was in place. You've now experienced what it is to be part of an efficiently run virtual convention. And happily, our job was made easier by having only one resolution to consider. The resolution subcommittee resoundingly recommended an amended version on August 26th of the one resolution we had. That's all the dry stuff. But behind every resolution, our committee considers are real people, engaged progressives with a passion for and an engagement in public life. The resolution that we recommended to you, and I'm pleased to say that you passed resoundingly, was proposed by First Essex Youth Delegate Jack Moriarty, who showed the subcommittee his considerable acumen and certainly his passion for the subject. So I thank you for your consideration, and I would like to read the resolution because I think it's an important one. Whereas for many Americans, economic inequality is already at crisis proportions and growing worse every year in our nation and in our state. And whereas owning a business or participating in enterprise equity has been shown to be a pathway to economic security and a stepping stone to creating generational wealth, and whereas because of the twin scourges of systemic racism and gender bias, businesses owned by minorities, women, and other marginalized communities have had their paths to success disproportionately encumbered. And whereas mechanisms like employee stock ownership and worker-owner cooperatives can short-circuit economic inequality and help rebuild the relationship between work and economic security. Therefore, be it resolved that the Massachusetts Democratic Party will fight for policies that expand access to employee ownership in the form of employee stock ownership plans, ESOPs, and worker-owned cooperatives, as well as financial assistance for employee ownership conversions in the form of loans and loan guarantees. And be it further resolved that in furtherance of these goals, Massachusetts Democrats support S-261 H-511, legislation that would establish a permanent state-funded Massachusetts Center for Employee Ownership, MassCEO, in furtherance of these goals. Thank you very much, delegates, for your attention and for your votes.
Marianne, thank you so much, and thank you for all your hard work. And thank all of you for attending this convention. We are now at the end of our convention, but before we end, there are a couple thank yous I must make. First of all, to our incredible JFK scholars and Moakley interns. They worked with us during the summer, and they were just made such a difference for all the work and making us have successful virtual caucuses. Thank you to the host committee, and especially again to our platform chairs, Steve Tompkins, Shannon Liss-Riordan, and Jay Gonzalez. And then finally, I'd like to thank the staff of the Mass Democratic Party, Nigel Simon, Allison Mitchell, Aaron Bukele, Jeremy Camo. And for his first convention as convention manager, I'd like to thank Joe for everything that he's done. And then, of course, the last person that really runs this party is our executive director, Veronica Martinez. We couldn't do without her, and I really appreciate her. She's in the back of the room for everything she does. I'd love to everyone to give her a virtual round of applause. So, with that, I can call this convention adjourned.